Going. The lines are open, 877-301-8970. All that ahead, the 11 o'clock hour of BPR on GBH and NEPM.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. The Senate is expected to take up a vote soon that could end the government shutdown, but it's not expected to pass. Federal agencies went dark just after midnight when lawmakers failed to agree on a short-term funding bill. The National Park Service says it will keep open-air parks accessible to the public while closing those attractions that include staffing for visitor services. Sarah Wright from member station KQED reports.
An internal memo emailed to KQED details last-minute instructions for many national parks to stay open, but with a pared-down staff for emergency services. Jesse Chakrin is the executive director of Fund for People in Parks. He says this is the tightest turnaround for shutdown planning he's ever seen, leaving staff scrambling with little time to inform the public.
I don't think it's going to be a good situation. I think it's going to be chaos.
And with staffing already down by 24% this year and threats of further firings during the shutdown, Parks leaders say staff morale is at, quote, rock bottom. For NPR News, I'm Sarah Wright in San Francisco.
The Trump administration announced this week that it's putting more than $500 million toward reinvigorating coal. Caitlin Tan from Wyoming Public Radio reports.
Some of the federal money will go toward coal power plants slated to close or switch fully to natural gas. The vision is to retrofit the plants so they can burn both coal and natural gas depending on markets, which Rocky Mountain Power's David Eskelson says is,
certainly possible, but, whether it would be cost effective is another question altogether.
Eskelson says despite the federal announcement, Rocky Mountain Power still plans to fully switch its coal plant in southwestern Wyoming over to natural gas by the end of the year. The state has a total of 10 coal plants. For NPR News, I'm Caitlin Tan in Pinedale, Wyoming.
A new NPR PBS News Marist poll finds concern over gun violence tops the need to protect gun rights. NPR's Domenico Montanaro reports there's a sharp partisan divide.
Roughly 6 in 10 surveyed say they believe controlling gun violence is more important than protecting gun rights. But while 90% of Democrats and almost 2/3 of independents feel that way, 3/4 of Republicans side with protecting gun rights. There was a notable split, however, among a key Trump base group, white voters without college degrees. 6 in 10 white men without degrees were more in favor of protecting gun rights, but a majority of white women without degrees said controlling gun violence was more important. This as there have been high-profile shootings in recent weeks in Michigan, Colorado, Texas, and Utah. Domenico Montanaro, NPR News, Washington.
On Wall Street, the Dow was down 10 points. This is NPR News.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH newsroom in Boston, I'm Craig Lamolt. 2 brothers from Sheffield, Massachusetts are on a flotilla of nearly 50 ships headed to Gaza with humanitarian aid supplies for Palestinians. As GBH's Tori Bedford reports, the Israeli government is promising to block their arrival, set for Thursday.
Adnan and Tor Stumo, 2 brothers originally from Sheffield, set out about a month ago on ships from Barcelona organized by the group Global Samud Flotilla. They're carrying medical supplies, baby formula, and food. Adnan Stumo says he expects a hostile reception from Israeli authorities.
We understand that there's likely to be some level of violence against us, but we are fully committed. We're headed to the shores of Gaza until they bomb us or board us and force us to divert.
Israel has intercepted previous flotillas and is vowing to do the same. Tori Bedford, GBH News.
GBH is responding to the clawback of federal funding with a major fundraising campaign launched this morning called Funding the Future. The nonprofit educational foundation is looking to raise $225 million over the next 3 years. GBH President and CEO Susan Goldberg was on Morning Edition today to speak about the campaign and its unique slogan based on a directive from Congress.
Go fund yourself, because that is really what they told us to do.
Goldberg says the funding will help GBH secure programming and increase its presence on digital platforms. Sunny today, a high in the mid-60s. Clear tonight, going down to the 40s. Tomorrow looks sunny with a high just above 60. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Imaginable Futures, envisioning a future where learning sparks opportunity and thriving belongs to everyone. Learn more at imaginablefutures.com. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Welcome to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are not live from the Boston Public Library today. We apologize, but we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be not back at the library this week. We hope to be back next week. GBH Engineering is working to repair some technical problems. We hope to be back next Tuesday. Hello, Jim.
Hello, Marjorie. Joined now in Studio 3 by national security expert Juliette Kayyem, former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Obama, the faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and CNN senior national security analyst. Hi, Juliette.
Hi, great to be back. Back in the hood.
Yeah, thank you, Juliette. So we're going to start playing a little clip of a secretary. I don't suppose, would you call him Defense Secretary or Secretary
John King
of War
corrected
now?
us yesterday. He's still, until Congress acts, it's the Department of Defense. But
Yes.
he calls himself Secretary of War.
Okay, well, we'll call him Secretary of War.
Even when he's
That's what
sober, he
wants to be
calls
called.
himself Secretary of War.
Pete Hegseth kind of giving a TED talk yesterday to all these generals about the new military standards. Here he is.
It's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon. An entire generation of generals and admirals were told that they must parrot the insane fallacy that, quote, our diversity is our strength. They had to put out dizzying DEI and LGBTQI plus statements. No more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses.
Well, we left out. I can't believe we left out. And he went on to say, no more of that SH blank T.
No more of that, yes. And he said what they want to do is get back to killing people and breaking things for a living. That's Hegseth. Then we just want to play a little bit of sound. This was a really wild one from Donald Trump. This is a shortened version, but it was kind of a bit of a stream of consciousness about past presidents and himself walking up and down stairs, including a little musical number performed by the president. Here it is.
We were not respected with Biden. They looked at him falling downstairs every day. Every day the guy's falling downstairs. I'm very careful, when I walk downstairs, like I'm on stairs, like these stairs, I walk very slowly. Just try not to fall. You walk nice and easy. You don't have to set any record. Be cool. Be cool when you walk down, but don't bop down the stairs. So one thing with Obama, I had zero respect for him as a president, but he would bop down those stairs. I've never said, da-da-da-da-da-da, bop, bop, bop. He'd go down the stairs, wouldn't hold on. I said, it's great.
Okay.
What do you say about that?
Wow. So, yeah, what do we say about that? And by the way, the audience was pretty much stone-faced, all these generals and high-ranking military officials. So what do you think?
Well, I mean, they knew what they were getting into, which is, just to take listeners back, Hegseth called a meeting of basically all the top generals and admirals, so throughout the world, so every command, Southern Command in Asia, in Europe. That meeting had no agenda. So they were called back. Everyone suspected that Hegseth was going to use it to do something. I don't know. I have a belief that there are some rumors that Hegseth is going to leave as secretary and run for office. There might be an open Senate seat where he's from. And I thought, well, he's just using it for, he's prepping for campaign videos. It was such a nightmare and so criticized that somehow either Trump decides to come in or is joined. And the generals kept pretty quiet. There was a lot of politics, a lot of unnecessary sort of partisanship, which we just heard a lot, but mostly just wasted time. Like, you could do all of this stuff through a memo if you're going to change physical standards. But it was a very odd, disturbing moment, and what made it even more interesting and the reporting coming out of it is, when you become a general or admiral, likely you have served in combat in either Iraq or Afghanistan, and to be lectured by a guy who can't even get a primetime spot as a Fox host, he was a weekend co-host, who has a runway of bad behavior, immoral behavior, alcoholic behavior, to be lectured by him about fitness and character was viewed by many who are being quoted, at least anonymously, as a little bit too precious for
How
them.
about the standards? His
Yeah,
line.
so I
I don't
wanna
have
get
it right
to
in
the
front of me.
substance, yeah.
Well, you can talk about it. That women, everybody has got to meet the same top male standards. What are we? Is there any evidence that women serving in combat now are a problem?
No. And this has been a part of his narrative before he became Secretary of Defense. I did a story on it in terms of his sort of like focusing on women in combat. And he was asked in the hearing when he was nominated, would he rescind the changes that allowed women to serve in combat, and he said no. So it appears what he's doing. Well, he's doing two things. One is he has fired a lot of senior women at the Pentagon. So the first day they fired the commandant of the Coast Guard, who happened to be a woman, the head of the Air Force Academy, a woman. Lots of women are getting sort of like, in these purges are getting out. Senior women, and there's not that many of them. We don't know yet. I was looking. We don't know yet what these new standards are and whether and its impact on women in combat. It's such a small percentage. I think most of the forces are, maybe the Army's the best, but it's not like it's 50-50 right now. The combat roles are very exclusionary. Most men can't satisfy them, or many men can't satisfy them. So it's just a focus on physicality that befits Hegseth, who really has nothing much to offer otherwise.
He does the pull-ups. Apparently, he does them wrong. People say he does them wrong.
Yeah, it's just such an embarrassment. But it does show you that, and there's been some reporting this last week, just that Hegseth has become a little bit manic. Like he sort of knows that he's lost the generals. Maybe calling them in was a way to sort of assert control. They owned the room. Hegseth did not own the room. There's a great image of him ending his speech, and there's complete silence, like uncomfortable silence, because they know that they're not supposed to clap. And he's waiting for the clap because, as I said, I suspect he's using this for campaign purposes. And you see him sort of flinch, like, oh, they're not going to clap for this rousing speech of nothingness. So it's a waste of time, a waste of money. It was a security theater. It was a security risk. It also was security theater, and did nothing to promote any agenda.
Let me ask you, speaking of security, having all the top military leadership in the world for our country, and the President of the United States and the Secretary of War in one room.
It was crazy.
Okay,
and Quantico's
so be as
not built for
charitable
that.
as you can possibly be. Was there any reason for this meeting to be convened?
No.
None.
I had an idea.
What they kept saying
declaring the war within the United States.
But that
which
ended up
bizarre.
not being the headline. So this is what's so interesting. So there is a defense policy agenda that is going to be released. Apparently, there's a lot of infighting about it, including with Donald Trump's picked Joint Chiefs of Staff, where Hegseth wants to orient the United States military essentially towards the homeland. That rarely mentions China, except for in the context of Taiwan, which I'm not even sure we would defend at this stage. And we haven't seen anything released from that. But you're right that Donald Trump said that going into cities is like good practice for the military. That's a different story right now, because obviously he's deploying the military. But it is a sense their push towards authoritarian policies includes utilizing the military in the homeland in ways that we've never seen before. And there's lawsuits left and right about this.
Just to amuse me, for people out there who were very critical of Joe Biden's cognitive abilities at the end, including me and Marjorie, but for those of you who are really critical of Biden and who are Trump supporters, please text us and tell us what you thought of Donald Trump talking about how tariffs are his favorite word yesterday. Will I get the Nobel Prize?
Yeah.
How he
Think
walks.
about beautiful paper. We have his clip about him talking about beautiful, gorgeous
it's
paper.
It's too
that he
long.
likes.
Let's not go into the whole. It was so out there. The line on TV was a typical political speech. It was not a typical. It was a rambling, lunatic
Yeah.
a compilation of non sequiturs, of things that had no relevance, that are totally disrespectful to these military
and he
people.
Slurred
And to
words.
us. And to us.
Slurred words repeatedly.
Yeah, no, it is. It's the cognitive capabilities of the president of the United States are relevant, right? And we thought they were relevant for Biden. They are relevant for Trump. I'm with you. Because I've been watching Trump for 10 years. It's not the same.
Oh, it's not the same at all.
First of all, it's not, I hate to say this, but like there was a humor to the madness. Like, in other words, he knew how to get the laugh line. Now it's just rambling without sort of, about the steps and about Obama. It's a sort of weird chain of consciousness. And from a security perspective, there's two things I think about. One is, of course, foreign countries and their leadership and their intelligence agencies are looking at this. So they know that this is a president who might be in cognitive decline. So they're thinking about J.D. Vance and whether there will be a transition in the next 4 years. But the more important thing is, who's in charge right now? The president, apparently, when Schumer and Jeffries came out after briefing him before the shutdown, apparently he didn't know basic things in the budget, including Medicare, its impact on rural farmers, all of this stuff. He didn't know basically Medicaid. Yeah. So you're thinking, okay, who's in charge? There's a lot of evidence to suggest that the Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, is very much in on all the big decision makings, much more so than J.D. Vance. So we do have a situation in which the question of if the president doesn't seem aware of decisions he is making, he clearly signs executive orders and has no idea what's in them, then who is? And that from a security perspective is, the vulnerabilities, if a deputy chief of staff is making the major decisions about our national and foreign policy, that's something that foreign governments will take advantage of.
Well, by the way, I think it's fair to say that comparable levels of authority were making decisions during the end of Joe Biden.
Probably.
And Democrats should have had the courage to call that out. They did not, for the most part.
Yeah.
And Republicans should have the courage, which is almost laughable right now, to say the same thing about the president of their party.
Right. I think the difference is, I don't think I ever thought Biden... for me personally, you saw these moments that were sort of horrifying, but I never saw him not know what was like in sort of major legislation or what was the headline of the
Juliette,
day.
the debate, he had no idea what he was talking
that's-
about.
yeah,
He had
yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
no idea what he was talking about.
That's
In any case, and they should have called
But don't forget, that was far into his term, too.
Yeah.
In any case, can we switch gears? Something that Trump has done, which at least as a layperson, seems to me at least has a small chance of success, the horror in Gaza.
Yeah.
He comes out with his 21-point plan. It's endorsed by Netanyahu.
We think.
Well, I mean, he endorsed whatever he endorsed.
Yeah.
I don't know if he endorsed the details. It's a good point. At the same time, I'm sort of shocked, and tell me if I should be, that Hamas didn't reject it a second after Netanyahu and Trump announced it, and they haven't, correct?
Right.
So what does that mean, do you think?
So I think we're, apparently, right? So we don't know all the details. Trump basically said to Netanyahu, this is the last deal you're going to get from us. We don't know how much of that is sort of for theater consumption, like how much were they talking behind saying, like, let me, put a thumb on the scale and make sure that it looks like you came to me. And then that protects Netanyahu from his internal domestic politics. We don't know where Hamas is, but I think the delay is right. And it basically is, some combination of what we've seen before with a provisional authority in Gaza, sort of an outside authority that then transitions to what we don't know, because what we don't know is at the same time, at least my understanding from reporting there and Western reporting is that there is a very, very focused effort to essentially raise Gaza. Yes, you'd have a provisional authority there, but what's the provisional authority doing? Are they vacating all the remaining Palestinians from Gaza? From what I can tell, Netanyahu has not walked back his focus on essentially, real estate in Gaza. So if they're purging Gaza of human beings, I have not heard Netanyahu saying that's no longer part of the plan.
So,
and that may be the holdup.
And the provisional transitional thing will have no Palestinians on it. It will be chaired by Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But the only name he mentioned yesterday was Tony Blair. And all I remember of Tony Blair as former Prime Minister of England was when he was termed Bush's poodle.
Yeah.
When he essentially went along with the weapons of mass destruction.
I also remember what a good talker he was, though, before, because I think Tony Blair is the one who convinced a lot of people.
Yeah, but if you
get into the war.
But if you disgraced yourself in terms of Iraq, what kind of credibility do you bring to any discussion about Gaza and Israel?
Right. I mean, Tony Blair has spent a considerable amount of time since he's been in office. He's a very wealthy man based on work he's doing in the Middle East and in the Gulf, and to bring him sort of out of whatever world he's in now as a sort of independent agent is just not. It doesn't feel right, but maybe he will be accepted by Hamas, and then Hamas will then recede. But we haven't heard anything. I mean, I think. What happens if this works is really, really good in the sense that, at least you'll have the end to the war, you'll have a release of the hostages. But I still don't have a clear understanding of the long-term strategy for this land called Gaza, because the last I left it was they're going in and they're going to raise the place, and that they won't touch the West Bank. That seems to be the quid pro quo.
Can I raise one more thing? Yeah. That's, obviously, it's so much upsetting that's happened here, starting obviously with October 7th.
Yeah.
Obviously, continuing with the murderous behavior of Netanyahu and the carnage in Gaza. But because of Netanyahu's self-serving sadism directed at the Palestinians, you see this polling in the United States.
It's amazing.
But Israel is going to be a pariah amongst arguably its best friend, the United States. Probably for decades because of the actions of one man.
Well,
the irony.
Yes, it's the actions of one man. But, lots of political leadership here from both parties, lots of major pro-Israel organizations here that exist for the purpose of ensuring that Israel is defended by the United States, that the United States continues its relationship with
Israel.
Israel.
Right or wrong?
But that was the problem, right? Is if you were thinking long term, right? I hope they look and think, was this strategy clearly did not work? And I'm talking about organizations like ADL and others that never allowed for the growth of dissent that would separate Netanyahu from the importance of protecting Israel. They conflated those two, and then they conflated it with anti-Semitism. And then now look what happens. The irony for someone in an academia is you look at this polling and everyone who got expelled, every organization that got disbanded, every student that got suspended, every rally that was prohibited. I think we should recognize that what was happening on universities was a reflection of what was happening to the American public, and open our eyes to what this generation of not just Americans but Jewish Americans were telling us.
Well, the irony to me too is that Trump has been going after all these schools allegedly about anti-Semitism, which most people don't believe is going to do with anti-Semitism before. And his policies regarding Israel have created anti-Semitism and this massive turn of people against Israel.
Yeah.
It's not anti-Semitism the same way you're against the Israeli government, but you know what I mean?
Right.
It's the same. It's created this animus.
We should also say, you mentioned the ADL. There's an alternative organization. We've had Alan Solomon on, who's on the board of J Street.
Yeah.
The head of J Street is going to be on with us at some point in the next week or so.
And also, I should say, a number of rabbis in our community have been very vocal, including my kids and my the kids and my husband's at the temple they're at. I mean, there are voices that have been very clear about what Israel means and what Netanyahu is doing, and that those two things are not consistent. It is now. This is polling that those who support Israel and the continuation of Israel need to reckon with, rather than dismiss as mere anti-Semitism or just bad marketing on their part.
You know, by the way, this is another, we talked about cognitive decline with Biden and Trump. It's another area where Biden has a lot to explain.
I agree. I've said that. I agree. I mean, I think, I think, you know, I think the Biden foreign policy team, and in particular, I've been critical of former Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. I mean, you're hearing who has yet to come to terms about what happened, and still blames. I saw him on a podcast, like still blames the student protesters for what Netanyahu is doing to the Palestinians. I will say some people like Jake Sullivan, former national security advisor, has been very forceful on getting to a peace deal. I think I think it's important that the Democrats also do a reckoning about where the party was and why was it so far behind, not just their base, but the American public.
I agree with you. Juliette, it's good to see you.
Thank you, guys. Nice to be back here.
Thank you, Juliette. We've been speaking with national security expert Juliette Kayyem, former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard, Kennedy School of Government, and CNN senior national security analyst. Juliette, thank you. Coming up after this quick break, we're going to open the lines on the government shutdown. Government has shut down. In case you haven't noticed, I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
System of ocean currents in the Atlantic controls much of the world's weather. Climate change is expected to slow that current and might make it collapse.
We're kind of just putting a small little sensor down and then bringing it back up and seeing what the ocean tells us.
Come along with scientists in Greenland as they race time to figure it out. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Moderna. mNEXSpike, COVID-19 vaccine mRNA by Moderna, is available. Pharmacists can help with any questions about mNEXSpike. And Rockland Trust Bank, committed to helping individuals and local businesses work towards their financial goals by providing financial advice and resources. More at rocklandtrust.com. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Jim Browder and Marjorie Egan. We're not live at the library. I'm assuming you know this by now. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. No library at all this week. We're hoping all the engineering issues will be resolved by next. We'll let you know. So the government is shut down as of midnight for the first time in nearly 7 years. Earlier this year, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, the Democrat, took criticism from the left. Well, I shouldn't say the left. Took criticism from a lot of Democrats when he agreed to extend spending to avoid a shutdown. His approval ratings plunged. Democrats' approval numbers overall are in the tank. According to a new PBS News NPR Marist poll out today, the support for a shutdown or for Democrats to stand on principle is split evenly. 49% of voters across the political spectrum say they should let the government shut down because they're fighting to get some of the health care cuts restored. 50% of voters said they should compromise. As I assume you know by now, Social Security, VA, and other benefits will continue. Air traffic controllers are working without pay. That's great. They're essential.
TSA.
And notably, Trump immigration enforcement continues to thanks to a DHS carve-out. Aside from federal workers who've been furloughed, you know, Trump has threatened to fire tens of thousands during this. And the first Americans to be impacted by the shutdown will likely be mothers and young kids who rely on supplemental nutrition programs where the funding's about to run out. So the lines are open at 877-301 8970. Did Democrats pick the right moment to make a fight? Did they pick the right fight? Do you have confidence that they can win this thing? And do you even care about the shutdown if you're not directly affected by any of the programs that are being affected, or if you're not a federal worker? The number is 877-301-8970. Before we get your thoughts on that, I know you feel strongly about this too. I just want to get this out of my system. Of all the nauseatingly racist things Donald Trump has done, this whole thing with Hakeem Jeffries, where he has been posting, he being Trump, Hakeem Jeffries in a sombrero and an exaggerated handlebar mustache with a mariachi band playing in the background. The whole point of this is supposed to be the Democrats are fighting to have health care provided to undocumented people, which, by the way, is not only untrue, but even if it were true, the racism, by the way, he's done it more than once, as I'm sure you know, the racism coming out from Trump, and the fact, to my knowledge, that he has not been criticized by any people in his own party. It's one thing to support his position on this thing. Another thing to do this to Hakeem Jeffries or anybody else. It is nauseating.
Well, I think we know by now that his own party isn't going to criticize him for anything. I mean, it's just like and they get up there, as I said before, and lie about stuff. Undocumented immigrants are not allowed, and we double-checked all this morning. They're not allowed to enroll in Medicaid, Medicare, Children's Health Insurance Program, the CHIP program, or they cannot buy insurance through the Affordable Care Act.
And that's not one of the demands of the Democrats. Democrats want the Obamacare premiums not to go up. I just saw on CNN they would go up from $888 a year to $1,904, more than double, should the Republican big, beautiful disaster continue to be in place. And obviously the deep Medicaid cuts, which of course
is Mass Health.
Hospitals to close.
Mass Health in Massachusetts. I mean, I'm sure lots of people know people that are on Mass Health in Massachusetts. It's low-income health care. It's terrific.
League of Community Health Centers, Michael Curry's operation, serving 1 million people in Massachusetts, hugely dependent on Medicaid, Mass Health money. I mean, it's just, do you think Democrats are making the right stand? I assume you do. It's a pretty important issue.
I think they have to. I think they have to, because the idea that Trump is going to do stuff, shut down areas of the government, do things where the government's closed without congressional approval. He's done all these things already without congressional approval when the government's been open. So I don't see what the argument against it is at this particular point. And people are getting their notices very soon. You know, very cleverly, the big hits on health care are not going to come to people until after the election.
Midterms, right?
But the notices are going to go out to people starting soon. And you have to kind of figure out what you're going to do if you are an Obamacare person or you're on Medicaid to get by. And when they talk about these rural hospitals shutting down, that's what they're talking about, that rural hospitals are mostly supported by, not mostly, but in large part, I should say, supported by Medicaid. So they're not going to be able to afford to keep going.
And many in Republican districts, I should say.
Red states.
Let's see how they're going to explain that to their constituents.
That's right.
877-301-8970.
What do you think, Jim? You always ask me. You never say what you think. What do you think?
I think it is absolutely the right issue to put your money on the table on. The only issue is that the Democrats have the staying power to do this, because not only is there a question about whether or not the Democrats are strong enough to stay the course, I can't quite figure out yet. Maybe a listener can explain it to me. We'll ask Congresswoman Presley this later. Why should Donald Trump ever settle? Why is it not in his own interest, where he gains greater power, for the government to be shut down for endless periods of time?
I'll tell you one thing I said to you 15 times this morning. I may as well say it now that we're on the air, that the messenger matters. And if the Democrats can't find better messengers than Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, they're not going to win.
Even Governor Healy said that I think her line yesterday to us was, sometimes Chuck Schumer is not the best messenger.
Oh my God, they have got to get somebody out there that is charismatic and persuasive and talks in ways people can understand. Enough of this talk about the end of democracy. Nobody gets what that means.
We're not talking about that now. They're focused. I saw Schumer on CNN this morning. Well, I'm not a fan of his either. I was hired to work in his office when I was a young legal services lawyer.
There you go.
Thank God I said no to that.
Yeah.
Hey, in all seriousness, he did not, in 10 minutes, he's not an effective speaker. Healthcare. Never let himself be distracted. I agree he's not a great messenger, but they are totally on message. It's all about
they better get some governors or somebody who can talk, because it's annoying.
Well, can't be governors. Governors don't have votes in the Congress.
They're Democrats. No. You need someone that can talk, Jim. Who would you put in their place from the Senate, from Congress?
Okay, 877. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the answer to the question is. 877-301-8970. So we got to take a break in a second. What are your thoughts? Anything about the shutdown? I'm particularly interested, once you tell us whether you're pro or anti-shutdown, is if you think the Democrats have the strength to stay the course here and win this thing.
And by the way, while this big, beautiful bill would take away health care for millions of people and would cause costs to go way up, this is all, they're keeping all the help for the people that are making millionaires' salaries over $400,000. So that doesn't seem very fair to a lot of people. Anyway, we're going to keep talking about this. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy, listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The government shutdown. What do you think? 877-301-8970. We'll be right back.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, our inaugural Wednesday watch party. First up, the Eddie Murphy comedy Coming to America, a fairy tale flipped upside down, with a prince trading luxury for grit in Queens. Now we're revisiting the laughs, the love story, and the legacy. And we want to hear from you. Call in with your take on the now classic. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
The news you depend on here on GBH is made possible primarily by contributions from listeners like you. That's been the case for well over a half a century, but now that our federal funding is officially gone, listener support is more vital than ever. At a time when fact-based journalism is under threat, we're doubling down to continue our service to you, and you can join the effort. Help fund the future of GBH and keep public media truly public. Give now at gbh.org.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're not live at the library. I assume you know this by now. We are live in Brighton. Hopefully, we'll be back at the library next week. We'll let you know as soon as we do. We're streaming youtube.com/GBH News. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about the government shutdown. Congresswoman Presley, obviously, has a vote in all this, will join us in the 1 o'clock hour. We want your perspective. Now, one thing, by the way, we also have Judge Gertner at 1 o'clock on a whole host of things. Shockingly, the Supreme Court actually didn't agree with Donald Trump a few minutes ago. They are temporarily, at least, allowing Lisa Cook to remain on the Federal Reserve Board, and you remember she's the one who Donald Trump is trying to dump. 877-301-8970. All talk about the shutdown started at midnight last night.
Oh, we have a text from someone who says the timing was perfect. It coincided with my letter of increasing premium on my mailbox yesterday. My annual premium will increase from $480 to $1,500. I live on less than $20,000 a year. This means I will have to cancel my Part D insurance. That would be on Medicare.
And again, if you just tuned in, the argument, they had a press conference this morning with Mike Johnson and all the other Republicans in the House. Their whole argument is they're going to stand up, the Republicans, against the Democratic demand that undocumented people get health care, which is not
They're lying.
Anything that's on the table. They're lying.
I mean, okay, I'll shut up. Al from Spencer, thank you for calling.
Hi, Al.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Sure.
I love your show.
Thank you.
Yes. As far as I'm a Democrat, I've been a lifelong Democrat. As far as the shutdown goes, I'm all for it. My only problem is Chuck Schumer will cave and we'll get nothing for it. That's my problem.
Well, I mean, a lot of us worry about that.
The guy does not inspire much confidence, does he, Al?
Can I tell you, Al, why I'm less worried about him folding this time, unlike last time when he folded, is...
In like a nanosecond.
There is a real decent shot he's going to be challenged by someone like Ocasio-Cortez or someone like that in a Democratic primary. So even if the principle does not continue to motivate him, personal survival, I think, may. So generally, I agree with you, but I have a little bit more hope than you do. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Al, thanks for the call.
Democrats need to get a good speaker. Then they need to get stories from real people. They go to the homes of people with disabled children or with people who have otherwise led upstanding lives, and they had this catastrophe in their life and say, is my child going to die? I mean, they have to tell stories.
Yeah.
What are you laughing at?
I'm laughing because, should I say? Yeah, I can say this. We often, not often, occasionally have people on the show who are leaders telling stories about horrible things that are happening that are true. And Marjorie will always prompt them and say, tell us a story. I mean, policy convinces nobody of nothing. Stories are what move people. Marjorie prompts them again and again. And a minority, not a majority.
They have none.
They have no story. Not because the stories don't exist, but because they're horrible messengers too.
Yeah. It's like, what's that thing about, a billion deaths is a statistic and one man's story is a tragedy, one woman's story is a tragedy. I mean, it's so true. You need examples.
The example, very quickly, when I first moved to the state and I was hired to be the counterpoint to Barbara Anderson, the doyen of tax cutting in the state, I'd be talking about billions of dollars, which meant nothing to anybody. She'd be talking about how you can't buy a piece of pizza because of what the legislature. And even if it was disingenuous, it connected to real people. Andrea, you're in New Hampshire. You're next on BPR. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, guys. Thank you as always.
Thank you.
A couple of things. The old rules are done, and the Democrats have got to get this through their incredibly thick skulls. There are no rules. There's no decorum. They need to go low. I have to agree with the shutdown. They cannot give up. I also would say that there are some great voices out there. Representative Catherine Clark is amazing. Obviously, AOC. Representative Stansbury. I mean, these women, and I'm going to say women, are out there telling these stories. The problem is the coverage. And, when Democrats don't have a cohesive leader, we're not getting the right messaging out. But they have got to really dig down and fight. We don't have another choice. People are already getting hurt. And I have one huge ask. Yeah. We need to stop calling it Obamacare. It is not Obamacare. It is the Affordable Care Act.
I hear you. I hear you. I don't think that's a big issue. The only place where I disagree with you prior to that, Andrea, is when you say the Democrats have to go low. Maybe they do. Not agreeing to continue a government with no funding for important health care is not going low. It is going principled, and I know that's what you meant. They're fighting for the first time in a while, and that's what they need to do, and on that we agree. Andrea, thank you much for your call. We appreciate it.
I've just fallen in love.
Why?
With Robert on YouTube.
What did he say?
Marjorie's advice about storytelling comes from years of experience as a skilled reporter and columnist at the Boston Herald.
There's some truth to that. I mean, it's not. I think you went a little overboard, Robert. But there's some.
I love you, Robert.
No, it is true. By the way, that is your greatest skill, and it's one of the reasons why your columns were as great as Robert said.
Yeah,
it's because stories. I mean, but it doesn't matter what you're trying to convince people of in life. Stories are what move people. John in Westford, how you doing, John?
Hi, good. Thanks. How are you?
We're well. Thanks for calling. What's up?
Yeah, I'm for the shutdown. I don't think I don't think that taxpayers should pay for transgender surgery for minors. Another reason.
Wait. Wait. Let's get on the same fact page. Where's that part of the Democratic demand? It's not. I assume you know that, John. It's not what they're demanding.
All right, I'll have to look it up for you.
Well, respectfully, John, you're a really good caller, and we like you a lot, but that's just not factually accurate.
Well, it's hard to tell because everyone's lying so much. You have to really source it well. But what's the second thing, John?
Go ahead, John.
Oh, that 2/3 of the voters, and this is according to the New York Times, are against the idea of, I know you're going to say illegal immigrants, it's not a true thing about getting, but they already do receive free health care. They already have health care, and what it will do is end taxpayer-funded health care for illegals that are already receiving it.
Okay, and John, Where do they receive, how do they receive their health care? They can't get Medicaid, they can't get Medicare, they can't be on the Children's Health Insurance Program, they can't buy insurance through the Affordable Care Act. What they can do, and this is true, maybe you want to stop this, but if you are in an emergency, you're run over by a bus, or you're having a baby, or you're in some kind of life-threatening situation, and you go to an urgent care public hospital, an emergency room, you are going to get care there. Do you think we should not give people care in those situations?
So you're saying in Massachusetts there are no illegal immigrants on Mass Health?
That's what I'm saying.
I think there are.
John, you know what we're going to do?
UMass Memorial.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. No, you go ahead. No, I didn't mean.
The last one is the last one is I think because I think it's just going to hurt the Democrats. I do. I think it's going to backfire. That's the fear.
That you may be right about. John, we're going to fact check the issues you raised. Stay tuned. I know you will. And call us again soon. Thanks for the call. 877-301-8970.
You know, there's not to say there aren't the people that cheat. You know, people scam people all the time. There may be people that cheat, but it's what they're doing, and you know, they're very good at this. John Thune, J.D. Vance, Speaker of the House, Republican Speaker of the House, get up there and said this is all about illegal people getting health care. That's what this is all about, and that's not true. But they convince people, even people like are really diligent examiners of fact.
Well, what John may be talking, I mean, obviously, undocumented people in Massachusetts do get health care through emergency care, as you mentioned a minute ago. I know, so that's true, but that isn't what they're trying to portray. John and others who share John's point of view is that's what the Democrats are fighting for. They're not. They're fighting, as Marjorie said before, for incredibly deep cuts in Medicaid. They're going to affect people like your grandmother who may be in a nursing home. What?
$480 a year to $1,500 a year. That's on Medicare.
Yeah.
That's not Medicaid. That's Medicare.
Well, Medicare is not part of the discussion here.
Medicaid is for poor people.
Right. No, it's not just for poor people. Nursing home care,
people. Yeah, you're right.
which John Gruber tells us about all the time, he's with us, I think, tomorrow, is for middle-class people who need serious care when they're older. So this is not what's on the table. It's a misdirection play by Republicans, and obviously with some people, it's working. 877-301-8970. Mike in a car. Hi.
Hi. So for Marjorie's call for a better spokesman to replace Schumann and people saying there's nobody in the House and Senate, Tammy Baldwin, Senator Tammy Baldwin.
She's great,
yeah. That's a good point.
Double amputee.
Yep.
A fighter. She can stand up to any bully, lying bully. She is great. There's video of her. She speaks the truth. She's a great American. She's also a liberal, but I find her unassailable. She never says anything that's airy, that's nonsense, and I don't know why the Democratic Party has not been putting her right up front. I suspect maybe she doesn't want to go to higher office, but she is absolutely the answer.
Yeah, Mike, that's a great point. I don't know enough about the way the inner workings of the Democratic Party go, but I suspect it's a matter. Somebody's got to convince Schumer and Jeffries to step aside, to stop being on television every night, to get somebody else to replace them, to stop being in the news.
Tammy Baldwin. Who were you talking?
I'm sorry. I get Duckworth.
Tammy Duckworth is the woman who lost legs in combat.
The helicopter pilot who was shot
down. Duckworth.
And by the way, it's funny. I'm so glad you brought her up, because when I was listening to the sickness coming out of the mouth of the macho Secretary of War yesterday, talking about what standards women have to meet, first person I thought about was Senator Duckworth, who again lost both her legs in service to this country in combat, and so much for Hegseth. Hey, Mike, thank you for your call. We really we appreciate it. 877-301-8097. Anonymous texter says, done with Democratic leadership. Young blood is the only way forward. Hakeem Jeffries is part of the young blood. Hakeem Jeffries and Catherine Clark from Massachusetts were elected as the number one and number two, the leading Democrat, number two Democrat, when Nancy Pelosi and her fellow octogenarians, as effective as Pelosi was, were basically shunted aside primarily because of their age.
Well,
he is the next generation. You may not like him, but
it's not a question of whether you're young. It's whether you're a good
effective.
communicator.
I agree.
And that's the bottom line. You got to be an effective communicator, which he is not. I saw him on television the other night. It was just, he couldn't answer a question. It was platitude after platitude. Not one story, as I said, of anybody getting impacted. He's just bad. And Schumer's worse.
877-3. I'll tell you the one thing, Schumer, I talk about superficial. I'm always accusing you of being superficial.
I'm superficial.
Let me do it many times over. The thing that drove me nuts about Schumer through the years is when he has those little glasses of his, those half glasses propped on the end of his nose. It drives me nuts. And so I'm watching CNN this morning. He's got new glasses. He's got big black frame glasses like normal people wear that are already pushed all the way back on the top of his nose.
I take it back. He's ready for battle with his new glasses, Jim.
Here's Curious Ed watching on YouTube. This is the best one yet. Sounds like everyone's looking for a savior, and he's sort of as channeling Barack Obama, and Curious Ed says, it is us. And I think there's a lot of truth there. By the way, the reason the Democrats are fighting, I mean, let's be clear here. This is really important. It's because Democrats don't like Democrats. Rank and file Democrats are saying we're a leaderless pot, they say. And as a result, Schumer and Jeffries are, for their own survival, are fighting.
2.5 weeks to the next big nationwide protest. Let's hope that people are really taken to the streets at that one if they don't like what's going on. Eric from Springfield, thank you for calling.
Hello, team. Thanks for having me. I just wanted to make a brief clarification. I work in healthcare currently. I'm also a U.S. United States Army veteran, and a lot of these opinions floating around, especially surrounding healthcare, are just quite often so misaligned with the truth. And I don't expect a layperson or person not working in the field to understand all of them acutely. And I won't bore you or your listeners with describing why certain things that are said are factually incorrect. But when we talk about, say, emergency department care, yes, there is a federal mandate. We're going to see whoever comes here, right? We're going to see whoever walks through the door. But for any of you, and I'm sure all of us have at one point or another seen an urgent care or an emergency room, how much of that is part of the overall care? There's a difference between an emergency department or ER and trauma care, right? If you're in a car accident, it's traumatic. Those make up a very slim margin of ED care. People go to the ED for a cold, a flu, a broken limb even. But how much of that? I myself broke my knee, was taken to the emergency room, given a single pill, an X-ray, and told stay off of it until you can follow up with an orthopedic surgeon. And there's no way that you're faking insurance through the entire care of orthopedic surgery.
So
there's no way that happens.
So what is your clarification, Eric? I'm not following it. Is this about people who are not in the country legally?
So people that think that people in the country not legally are hemorrhaging our money through care, through emergency department, federal government dollars. This is not what's costing the cost of living to increase for the average citizen in Massachusetts. It's just factually incorrect.
We're really glad you called, Eric. That was very helpful, actually. Thank you much for the call.
Thank you very much for that call.
An anonymous texter, actually, I was going to bring this up with Judge Gertner yesterday. An anonymous texter says, did you see that at the meeting with Schumer and Jeffries that Trump had, on the Resolute desk were red hats? You know what they said on them? Trump 2028. By the way, for those who haven't paid attention, the 22nd Amendment says you can only serve 2 terms. But obviously, who cares about the 22nd Amendment?
We were talking this morning. The Supreme Court could decide that only referred to consecutive terms.
We're going to ask Judge Gertner about it. I don't think it's preposterous at all to think if Trump tried to run again, as incoherent as he may be, that they'd give him a permission slip. So that means Obama could run against him, by the way.
That's right.
No. That should be a hell of a race.
And then we'll see who can walk up the stairs better, because Trump is complaining about President Obama bopping up and down the stairs. Of course, he was a lot younger. Peter from Mystic, Connecticut has an idea. He says, how hard is this to message? The Republicans want to shut down the government so they can triple your Obamacare premiums.
By the way, that is almost as good as a story, because that is a story.
Yeah.
That is totally and completely true. They really did pick a perfect issue, I think, because nothing matters more to people than healthcare. This is a concrete thing, and the only limitation on the value of it is what you've said repeatedly, which is the Republicans were smart enough in the big, beautiful law to make sure that the vast majority of cuts don't go into effect until after the midterms. So in most cases, they're prospective rather than current.
Well, it's almost gotten so bad now, the lying, that almost every time you hear the other big line is, we're trying to get rid of fraud. We're trying to get rid of fraud. Yeah. Is there fraud? Yes. There's always fraud. But is that the big problem, as Eric was just saying? No, it's not the big problem. But it's almost like every time they say something, I doubt it, because they're all on the lying bandwagon now. Who's telling the truth in the GOP? I don't know.
Okay, well, I think we'll have to revisit that on some. Well, Ted Cruz. I'm going to celebrate Ted Cruz on free speech. My hero, Ted Cruz. Faye in Hamilton, you are next. Hi, thanks for calling. Really appreciate it. Faye.
Hi, Faye.
You called us, Faye.
Oh, hello. I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry.
I was so busy listening to you that I forgot.
That's okay. I forget sometimes,
too. Thank you for having me on.
We're pleasure. It's our pleasure. Go ahead.
I just wanted to agree with both you and Marjorie that we need stories. And we need stories, and they need to be true stories, unlike what the Republicans have been telling about us turning our children into girls or boys against their parents' wills. The truth is that people are losing their health care. And I'm glad the Democrats are shutting the government down. It's terrible, but it's the only thing we have to fight what's happening now. And to hurt now is so much better than millions and millions of people losing their health care and their stability later. And it's awful that we have to put up with this, but the Republicans have pushed the Democrats into a corner. And I hate this, but I think this is the only way, the only tool we have. And the Democrats need to be screaming stories loud and clear, coming from real people. And that's all I have to say.
You're singing Marjorie's tune. Marjorie, here's a quiz for you. Who, at least in my, I know you hate quizzes. No, this one I think you'll get. I'm 90%.
To most of them that I don't.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm
Thank you.
90% sure I'm right about this. Who, I use the term, I think it's mine, government by anecdote, which is telling stories. Who started that brilliantly? I would argue Ronald Reagan, and I have some personal experience. When he I was a legal services lawyer, and when Ronald Reagan tried to fund legal services, he cited there was one example in the United States of a legal services office, Connecticut Legal Services, representing someone who was trying to get some gender-affirming surgery, and he was factually accurate. It was true. It was the only case in the United States where legal services was doing it, but he was using that story as a reason why Congress should defund legal services for the poor. And while he failed, funding was reduced dramatically. It was the first example I thought I remember where a leading politician or president brilliantly used a story, even though it was an outlier.
He also talked about welfare
to achieve a goal. Of course, right? Yeah, and their Cadillacs, right? And he cited there was one woman, I think, too.
Yeah.
So it's really
like people who talk about they're behind somebody in the checkout at Market Basket, and the person is using food stamps and they're buying lobsters, and isn't this outrageous?
Read that anonymous text. That's a good one.
Oh, is the shutdown the reason we haven't gotten our Doge refund checks yet?
Wasn't Trump saying that we're going to get they're going to be for the tariffs? He's going to also send money back to the same people who paid the tariffs.
Yeah, that's right.
He'd reimburse them.
I think they're coming. I think they're coming tomorrow. That's what I think they're going to. They're all going to arrive tomorrow.
By the way, and another anonymous texter is criticizing me for calling it the Department of War. I'm trying to be sarcastic. Obviously, it's not coming through. He or she is totally right. The only person that can change the name from the Department of Defense to the Department of War is Congress, and they haven't done it, so I should probably stop trying to be clever, because I'm not.
You do have to stop and think to yourself, this guy, a weekend host on Fox, and he did serve in the military, so I'll give him that. He was an honorable guy in the military. He gets up there in front of all those generals and people who've given their whole lives.
Yeah.
No, I don't. Okay, we are done. We are done. We're taking a quick break.
Well, but we're going to continue part of this discussion with Ayanna Presley, Congresswoman, at 1:30 today.
That's right. Right. The show ends up.
Do you have any idea what's next?
Yes, I do. The show ends at any p.m. Thank you for people up there that tuned in. The Fabulous 413 starts at 3 o'clock. The show continues here in Boston. We're going to talk about reforming the state legislature with a Democrat and a Republican. That's next. Congresswoman Ayanna Presley is going to join us later in the show. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM.
Since 1967, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting has supported your favorite shows, kept your commutes interesting, and most importantly, kept you informed. Now that Congress has defunded public media, CPB will cease to exist. We pause now to reflect on this historic loss. While federal funding is gone, GBH is still here, and we rely on your support to keep our mission going.
Nova traces the origins of Homo sapiens in an exciting 5-part series that follows our ancestors as they go global and shape the world we know today. Human continues tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Braude, head on Hour 2 of BPR live on the air, but not from the library. Congresswoman Presley will join us in the 1 o'clock hour today. But first this hour, our local Massachusetts legislature, one of the least transparent, least effective bodies in the country. As part of the coalition to reform our legislature, former MassGOP Chair Jennifer Nassour and former Democratic State Rep Jake Kaufman have ideas on what needs to change and how to get there, including a question on the 2026 ballot. They join us in Studio 3.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then it's all things arts and culture with GBH's Jared Bowen. Some of the biggest stars in comedy, Dave Chappelle, Kevin Hart, Boston's own Bill Burr, are taking flack for agreeing to appear at a comedy festival in the free speech human rights black hole of Saudi Arabia. Is the grief deserved? We'll get Jared's thoughts. Plus, our Two More Things segment next on the noon hour of BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Kristen Wright. The U.S. government has been shut down for 12 hours now because federal agencies have pretty much run out of money. And now a funding plan backed by Senate Democrats has just failed a little while ago. Now the Senate is voting on a Republican plan. Congress failed yesterday to pass competing measures to keep the government funded. NPR's Claudia Grisales says at the center of the shutdown is a political standoff.
Earlier this year, Senate Democrats helped Republicans keep the government funded, but that drew sharp backlash. And since that time, their lack of power in Washington has become even more stark. President Trump and Republicans passed a massive partisan spending and tax plan, dismantled government agencies, laid off workers, and slashed public services by clawing back billions in spending. Now, Democrats are asking for an extension of Affordable Care Act subsidies that are set to expire at the end of the year.
While the partisan conflict continues, an estimated 750,000 federal workers are expected to be furloughed, and funding for SNAP and WIC food and nutrition benefits could run out if there is a prolonged shutdown. Social Security, veterans, and disability benefits are not expected to be affected for now, but some services could be delayed, like the processing of applications. A new NPR PBS News Marist poll out today finds an overwhelming majority of people want children vaccinated before going to school. NPR's Domenico Montanaro reports.
The survey indicates 82% support requiring children to be vaccinated against certain diseases such as measles, mumps, and rubella before attending public school. That includes 71% of Republicans, but Republicans don't feel as strongly as independents or Democrats do about this. For example, 77% of those who voted for Democrat Kamala Harris in the 2024 presidential election felt while only 30% of Trump voters did. The Trump administration, led by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has consistently moved to limit vaccinations and downplay their effectiveness. Domenico Montanaro, NPR News, Washington.
The attack on a Latter-day Saints congregation in Michigan Sunday has some people of faith feeling unsettled about attending religious services. NPR's Jason DeRose reports from Grand Blanc.
The governor of Texas is instructing law enforcement there to increase patrols around houses of worship. Officials in Minnesota and Colorado took similar actions after a spate of attacks on religious people and institutions in recent months. Abby Bronkema attends a Baptist congregation near Grand Blanc here in Michigan.
You're going to focus on the better and the good, and you shouldn't have to be worried about the evil.
Bronkema says she thinks about safety while at worship, but she's not worried.
Because we have an excellent security team.
Church security is becoming more widespread these days, something synagogues and mosques in the U.S. have been grappling with for decades. Jason DeRose, NPR News, Grand Blanc, Michigan.
This is NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH newsroom in Boston, I'm Craig Lamoltz. Thousands of federal employees who live in Massachusetts are not receiving pay now that a government shutdown is underway. There are over 25,000 federal civilian employees in the state. Along with lost pay for those workers, at least for now, some popular tourist sites in the state that are run by the federal government are also shut down, including the Bunker Hill Monument in Charlestown and the JFK Library in Boston. National parks will remain partially open, but facilities like visitor centers that are run by the Park Service will be closed. That means the Salem Visitor Center, including its much-needed restrooms, will be closed to the public for the start of the city's busiest time of year. The chair of the state's Cannabis Control Commission, Shannon O'Brien, is leading her first commission meeting today after being reinstated to the post. O'Brien had been off the job since 2023 when State Treasurer Deb Goldberg suspended and later fired her over claims of on-the-job misconduct. O'Brien denied those allegations, and last month a state judge ordered that she get her job back, finding Goldberg's evidence for the dismissal was thin. At the start of today's meeting, O'Brien said she's honored to be back on the job.
After a long and difficult 2 years, I returned to the CCC with an even deeper sense of purpose and gratitude. Through the challenges, I was reminded of the resilience of this industry, the importance of the work the commissioners and staff do together for the people of Massachusetts.
Goldberg had considered appealing O'Brien's reinstatement, but decided to drop her effort last week. Sunny today, highs in the mid-60s, mostly clear tonight. Tomorrow looks sunny and a high just above 60. And the Red Sox are back in the Bronx again tonight for Game 2 of the 3-game series against the Yankees.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive, with small business insurance for protecting a variety of business types with multiple coverage options, designed to fit business owners' needs. More about small business insurance is at progressivecommercial.com.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are not at the Boston Public Library. We're not going to be there for the rest of the week. We apologize. We have some technical problems. But we do hope to be back there next week. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. We talk a lot on the show about government effectiveness, both in D.C. and here in Massachusetts. Our state legislature, you may have heard us say this once or twice, is one of the least transparent and effective bodies in the country. We're joined now by two people who, like Marjorie and me, occasionally tilt at windmills. We'll see if they are this time. They're engaged in an effort to reform the Massachusetts State House through an organization called the Coalition Reform Our Legislature. Their website, which is maybe the worst website name in the history of the world ever, is MaLegReform.org, as in Mass Legislative Reform, MaLegReform.org. Jennifer Nassour is the finance chair for the MassGOP, former chair of the party here in the state, and the founder of the Pocketbook Project. It's great to see you, Jennifer. It's
great
been a
being
while.
here.
Jay Kaufman is a former state rep and founder of the Beacon Leadership Collaborative. Jay, it's great to see you, too. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Jim and Marjorie, for having us.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, well, Jennifer, I was going to start by asking you to describe what this reform is all about, but maybe you should explain what Jim just said about the website. I mean,
it's not the website. The website's fine. The URL is just unmemorable.
Maybe they could read the website then. What's the website?
Yeah, so the Stipend Reform website, I should know by heart, but I think it's stipendreform.org.
.com.
What's that one again? Stipendreform.com.
That's the one you need to know.
We like that, Jim,
well, they don't know but nobody knows what they're talking about yet. So why don't you tell us about the organization, why it was formed, who makes it up, that sort of thing. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I'm going to let Jay start with
Go
it
ahead,
because
Jay.
he was one of the original crafters of the organization.
Well, let me sort of frame my complaints and reports on the state legislature in the context of this. It was a privilege of a lifetime to serve there. And I know a little bit about leadership. I know a little bit about how much we all care about democracy. And it's in that light that the failures of the state legislature and the dysfunctionality are just incredibly painful. We've been trying for some time. You have been masterful in helping the public understand this, which I appreciate enormously. But we've been trying to figure out for some time, what can we do about it other than
Well, who are
fetch?
we? Who is the we here, Jay Kaufman?
Well, it's bipartisan. Quite obviously, it's people who...
a lot of Republicans, Democrats, not just the two of you, by the way.
Correct.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
If you want to, I can read you the list of the 10.
Well, you can give us a few examples of who some of the people are.
So Mike Widmer is one of us.
Former head of Mass Taxpayers Foundation.
Exactly.
Amy Carnival is another one.
Chair of the GOP on the state. She's with us fairly regularly.
Jonathan Hecht, another former legislator. John Lippert, who was active in the progressive organizations in town. Trying to think who else.
Well, whoever. I mean,
Well,
it's a bipartisan group.
It's a bipartisan group. I mean, our steering committee is Mary Connaughton, former auditor candidate, Anthony Amore, former auditor candidate.
Her opponent.
Yeah. Well, no,
Diana's
Diana's opponent, but Mary's successor. And so, I mean, you really have, look, what I think Jay and I are trying to do is show bipartisanship is alive and well when we can come together and talk about, like, actual democratic reform, right? That's small d democratic, and how we want to change. It's not policy, but changing the policy makers.
Okay, so tell us how you want to change it. Start with one, the stipend reform.
Let me also say that it's a bipartisan problem that we're trying to address.
Okay, so, and again, stipendreform.com. You'll understand why there's that name for another website, stipendreform.com. Explain what the issue is with stipends. Well, you should actually start this, Jason. Did you used to get a stipend?
I did.
How much did you get?
$30,000
for doing nothing, or what did you do for it?
No, on the contrary. The way that the stipend reform is framed, we're trying to reward good behavior and proper use of the democratic process. Not the kind of just loyalty that's
so what kind of
how
many people get stipends? What do they get them for? What's the problem?
So first of all, the number of stipends, the amount of money that we spend on that a year is $5.5 million, and that doesn't include the pension benefits that the beneficiaries get of that for a lifetime.
I know, I'm really jealous about the pensions.
It's very expensive, and that number, that 5.5, is about 4 times what it was a decade ago. The number of stipended positions right now, you ready for this? 149 of the 200 members are considered part of the leadership team. So in practice, they're members of the leadership team, and the culture there is not leadership at all, it's fellowship. So these are rewards for loyalty and obedience, not at all for effectiveness.
Can we tell you, by the way, the Globe has done some brilliant reporting on this stuff.
Yes.
The story that put me totally over the edge is when they mentioned, I hope I get the numbers right, I think there were 12 committees in the legislature whose chairs were getting stipends. One, a guy who I had respect for when I was a lobbyist up there, Mark Montigny, he's been in the legislature forever, doesn't chair one committee, chairs 2 committees, or did, got a $61,000 stipend. The only problem with is the committees never met nor ever reported out a bill. And apparently 20% of the committees in the legislature, Jennifer, are chaired by people who get big stipends who do absolutely no additional work to get the stipends. Is that a fair summary of where we are?
That is a fair summary. Now, look, for the rest of us, we actually have to show up to work. We actually have to produce some work in order to get paid. That's just the way it works, right? And that's what we want. We want a meritocracy where we want to see that people are doing their job. And now the problem with this, right? And so what I see as an issue is a number of things. You get elected, and now I'm just going to use the Democratic Party because, the state houses, the majority are Democrats. But in that party, when you have someone who's super liberal, and then you have more conservative, and then you have the leaders who are telling them what to do, the more conservative member from a more conservative district is representing their constituency. But then they're in there, and as soon as leadership knows that they might be a squeaky wheel, they're given a chairmanship and told, keep your mouth shut, do what we tell you, and just, you're going to file the bills we tell you to file. On the flip side, on the more liberal side, they're also told, don't be a squeaky wheel. Those folks are also representing their constituency. So everyone is kind of getting screwed in the meantime because wherever you are. Now, that doesn't include the Republican side, and you have the same thing where we have people who are, and I'm sorry, you guys know who you are, and you hate me for this, but, we have people that are beholden to the leader, to the speaker, or to the Senate president, and represent districts that they should be representing more of their constituents' issues and less of what the speaker and the Senate president tell them to do. And so what we're saying is, look, this is a lot of money. Now, remember, these are taxpayer dollars that are given to these legislators not to do the work and not to be beholden to their constituency, not to be accountant to them, and not to be transparent for them. And that's what we have a problem with. So let's give the money back to the people to elect the representatives that are going to be in office representing their views and their opinions, and then give stipends to people who are doing the work.
So what do you can you explain exactly what you're proposing?
I just want to add to what Jennifer said. I don't disagree with anything she said, but my focus is more on the policy development that's not happening and the debate that's not happening. A vital democracy depends on engagement, informed engagement.
No, they buy their silence. There's no question.
Absolutely.
The leaders buy silence.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's what you're
let
saying.
people know what exactly you're proposing. Let's get to this, and then we'll work backwards.
We're saying the same thing.
Okay,
so there's
fine.
no debate on either side.
Hold it. Jay, what exactly, you have a ballot question, right?
That is correct.
Okay, what would the ballot question do should you get the signatures and should people vote for it next November? What would it do?
It will cut the amount of money that's being spent on stipends, total. It will cut the amount of money that any one individual can get. So right now, the Speaker and Senate President, for example, get more than double their allotted salary, their legally allotted salary, in stipends. So we would cut that.
What do they get? What's their total pay?
The base pay is $82,000, and the Speaker and Senate President are making $210,000. I can give you the exact.
Okay, so that's good enough. That's good enough.
Yeah.
So who would be able to get a stipend if your legislation were to become law?
First of all, a lot of the vice chairmanships, which are really no-show jobs, would be eliminated. Some of the alleged hall monitors, the division leaders, would be cut way back.
Hall monitors?
Well, we call them hall monitors because that's at best that's what they do. They're officially division chairs. The House is divided into 4 sections. Each one has a division chair, and by now probably a vice chair too, who do nothing other than allegedly poll the members and serve as a communication mechanism.
Margaret's got to take a call. She'll get back to you in a couple of minutes.
That's
Okay,
right.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
But between the Speaker and his members, so far it hasn't been his or her, it's just his members, they do nothing.
They hang in the hallway.
So
if they even show up. I mean, it's been a no-show legislature, so we don't meet. So
Right, we're not going to get to the 5-month vacation, which I think should have been.
I don't.
too.
5-month vacation is one thing, but to be there and not in session is something else. Committee meetings are virtually unattended, and there's nothing that goes on there other than maybe respectful listening of people who come in thinking that their presence is going to make a difference in the deliberations, but they don't.
So it seems to me, I'm listening to everything you guys say, and I think it's fair that without looking at all the details, Marty and I would agree, but I do want to see the details, of course. But Jennifer, the average voter, it seems to me, is not going to get steeped in stipends and whatever. It seems to me this is a vehicle, correct me if I'm wrong, a vehicle to express your dissatisfaction with an unproductive, not transparent, top-down leadership, squelching speech legislature. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that is fair.
Okay.
Bingo.
Okay, now here's the biggest problem to me, because let's assume this is a great idea, and let's assume you can raise the money and you have a year and get the signatures, which is not easy kind of thing. Roughly once a month, we have somebody you may have heard of in here, the auditor of the state. She did a ballot question that narrowly squeaked by a narrow 71 to 29%, which would allow the auditor to, this is obviously Diana DiZoglio, but any auditor to audit the legislature. And in typical legislative fashion, they have totally refused. And as of the moment, there's a big back and forth. As you know, we talk to each of them every month. The Attorney General would have to represent DiZoglio against the legislature's refusal. As of the moment, she's refusing for reasons that she thinks are legit. So you pass this thing next November, and the legislature says, thank you very much. We're ignoring it, or we're just going to repeal it. By the way, it's just a law. Even if it's passed by the voters, the legislature can meet on day one and repeal what you passed. So how do you respond to that, Jennifer?
Well, then we
Nassour?
bring it back out to the voters, and we do exactly what the auditor is doing and saying, look, they lack such transparency that they refuse the will of the voters. And I think it's just a matter of continuing to harp on this, that we have people who are in office that refuse the will of the voters and Jay and I tried. We submitted 2 bills to the legislature. This stipend reform bill died before it got anywhere. It
was never admitted.
It was never admitted. They wouldn't even look at it, right? So we tried going that way. Mm-hmm. Then we have another one on an independent legislative research bureau. I mean, how innocuous is that?
So that lobbyists don't write the bills, basically.
Correct.
That experts
and
would
we're
write
the
the bills.
only state in the country that doesn't have one of those. And it died in rules. It got stuck there. We have no idea. No one will tell us anything. So when we're talking about the lack of transparency in the legislature, the fact that they don't work for the people, one of the reasons that they're 44 ballot questions that were approved by the Attorney General to get signatures to try to get on for 2026 is because of the lack of work that the legislature is doing. And so I think the more people that are out there and understand that, they can hold their legislators' feet to the fire, because it's proven over and over and over again, people feel like they're connected to their state reps. Well, go ask your state rep what they're doing. What bills have they filed? What bills have come out? And what are they fighting for?
I want to take this one step further. This is an incredibly impolitic thing I'm about to say, but that's okay.
We love that. Yeah, we do.
I absolutely, I served there for 24 years. I've been tracking it in the 6 years since I've been out and recovering. And I don't think this legislature can or will improve itself. I don't think the current personnel are going to make the change. There's been so much time that has passed with bad habits that people don't even know how democracy can and ought to work.
So what's the end of that sentence?
The end of the sentence is we need more people to run for office.
Okay, let me say something that's going to pain me as much as you were nervous you're going to get blowback for that. I am completely against term limits. Marjorie is totally for term limits. And so is Jennifer. She just raised her hand. And this legislature is so out of control and so undemocratic, small d democratic. Even I, some days in moments of weakness, say there's the only thing that can solve this is the term limit these people, because otherwise they're going to just be there forever, squelching democracy.
I find myself saying exactly the same thing, really? And increasingly saying it with conviction. I'm very sad to arrive at this point, because I think we the people have the job of enforcing term limits. But we've been crappy at it.
Well, especially since almost, I mean, the problem, by the way, let me say this to you. You're part of the problem, Jennifer. And I don't mean this personally. No, you are. One of the reasons, the biggest problem here is there's no balance in the legislature.
Well, no candidates.
These Democratic leaders would not be rogue leaders. They wouldn't refuse to respond to reasonable requests from reporters, for example, which they do almost all the time, if there was a Republican presence in the legislature. So isn't the real fix to get a decent number of your fellow Republicans elected?
Yeah, look, when I was, I gave, for those of you out there, I gave Jim the stink eye, but I mean, Again. But when I was chair, we elected over the 3 years 19 new members to the legislature.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for you.
And last
Who
year...
was governor when you were...
Deval Patrick.
Okay,
and then Amy Carnevale, the current GOP chair, just saw 5 new people that were elected, including our first female to the Senate in a very long time. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we are making strides, but, we can't continue. I'm going to put it back on the media. One of the problems is the media ties all of our candidates to Donald Trump. And so if you're going to continue to tie Republican candidates to the national scene when we need a balance of power, I mean, look, one of the problems going on right now in Massachusetts is that one-party system is not working. We need a thriving two-party system in order to have the dialogue, because we on the right need to give those on the left, whether they're super far left or in the middle, an opportunity to also be able to voice their opinion and have that healthy
debate. You know what
debate.
the solution to the media, that horrible media, tying all those Republican candidates to Donald Trump?
I'm taking everyone down.
It's for the candidates to disassociate themselves from Donald Trump. And when they announce their candidacy, saying, I want to be clear, I belong to the same party, but there's virtually nothing he believes in that I support.
But why does that matter in the Massachusetts legislature? What are we deciding? We're not like the Boston City Council.
Because it suggests a worldview.
No, because you see the Boston City Council going out and doing, instead of talking about mass and caste, instead of talking about, housing crisis, they go and they do referendums on Israel and Palestine. What are we talking about in the Mass legislature? Why don't we talk about why jobs are not coming? Why don't we talk about high heating bills?
Can I answer the question? I happen to believe, and I say this with great care because it's serious. I believe Donald Trump is a racist of the worst proportion. Anybody who is willing to support a racist like that, I frankly don't want representing me.
But they're not supporting him. It's just,
no, but it says something about the person, doesn't it? I'm sorry.
I just want to bring it back to the horrors of the state legislature.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Never mind the horrors of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
What happens, and I think Jen would agree with me about this. What happens once somebody gets to Beacon Hill, they're indoctrinated very quickly in go along to get along. And this holds true for Republicans as much as for Democrats. Well, no, more for Democrats because there are more of us. But the candidates who run on a reform platform end that conversation on Election Day. It isn't sustainable for entirely understandable reasons. If you want to be effective as a legislator, as a Democrat or a Republican, if you want to advance your ideas, if you want to file a bill, if you want to actually have a hearing on a bill, if you want to have the even remotest chance of getting a vote on a bill, you've got to shut up and go along to get along.
Let me just ask you a question
and
here.
you learn that very quickly as a new legislator.
Because it seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to me since I've been here in Boston, which is like forever.
Your whole life.
We've been talking about this forever. Bill Budger was an autocrat running the state Senate, and then Finneran, you had to, if Tom Finneran was an autocrat and all that kind of stuff. And the thing when Ed Markey got in trouble for something he did when he was the legislature, ran that ad, when they put his desk on the roof or
in the
down
hall,
the
Tom
basement
McGee,
or
but the
something like
speaker
that.
put his desk on the hall.
So it seems like this has been going on, maybe to a lesser degree, but forever.
Well, yes, I think that is true. And
I don't think it is true.
Well, I think there have been times, I experienced times when it wasn't like that at all.
When was
When
that?
I was first elected under Charlie Flaherty.
Okay.
I think there was the meritocracy that Jen was referencing. There was real engagement. We walked into the chamber, there was a pile of papers on our desks with summaries of all the bills that we might hear that day. I don't think anybody would consider voting on a bill before there had been vibrant debate.
Okay.
So there was informed, we were engaged.
I ran a tax reform group when Bill Bolger was the Senate president. There was at least a third of the 40 members who every single day would stand up and confront Bolger, who I would argue was the toughest, most autocratic leader of the Senate, but they weren't cowed by him. This is a relatively new phenomenon.
You think so?
When everybody,
And the other thing that you having had experience as a lobbyist would know this. Right now, lobbyists don't go to the members anymore.
They just go to the leader. Exactly.
They just go if they either have a good relationship. They either have a good relationship with Mariano or they don't. They either go to his fundraisers or they don't. But their efficacy is tied to their relationship with him. They don't bother with chairs, much less members of committees.
Okay, let me try again. Because I don't watch the local television news that much, but when I do watch the local television news, it's a series of car crashes and fires, and the legislature never gets there. There used to be much more of a robust coverage of the legislature, both in the Herald and the Globe, and that's all gone now too. I mean, the Globe does it.
Been brilliant.
Yeah, the Globe does it, but the Herald doesn't really do that much anymore. Well, people don't read the Herald really anymore. So I wonder if there's a lack of media engagement too. You're right about the Globe, but there doesn't seem to be it's not front and center, I don't think.
Well, it's also we get our news from so many different sources now. I mean, there is it's very difficult right now for the public to know where to get its news. Right?
But Marjorie, you remember back in the day, right? I mean, I worked in the legislature 25 years ago, and back in the day, you would go to the press pool, and there were actually people there. Now you have, a handful of the State House news reporters, and the State House news reporters do their best. And for those of us in the know that subscribe to it, that's where we get a lot of our inside news. And I do a lot of time, I talk to a lot of members on both sides that are in the House and the Senate. They are good people. They want to work. And what I am told is we only show up for formal session, and that's it, right? And that's a disservice to all of us who are out there thinking that we are living in a representative democracy and we don't have anyone representing us.
Well, in all fairness, I hate to counter that.
Piece.
I don't want to get another fight with you. But one of the reasons they're not there all the time, Jennifer, is they have to have time to plan their 5-month vacation. So, and that takes... So the website for this thing, which I think both Jay Kaufman and Jennifer Nassour agreed, while the merits matter a lot, the stipend reform, it's also sending a larger message to the legislature. It's stipendreform.com. Forget the other website. It's hopeless. Stipend, I mean, you can Google it if you want, but stipendreform.com. We're going to talk to you a lot in the months ahead. Can you get signatures quickly? It's a lot of signatures.
That's a great question. It is very tough. And any of your listeners who want to help,
go to stipendreform.com.
Stipendreform.com. We need volunteers. We need money. We need a lot of help. And we've got a good cause. Yeah. And I think you mentioned that 72% that voted for the reform last year. Our early polling showed better than that. So I have not the slightest doubt that if we can get this on the message, on the docket, then we can send a very strong message.
I get a high hill to climb here. Did you see John from Beverly's text?
I said it before.
Yeah.
I mean, why won't they repeal it?
Believe.
One step at a time.
I was really disappointed that the cell phone legislation didn't get through in the State House. There's been so much legislation.
Banning in schools, you mean?
Yes, and I think it got through the Senate, but it was stalled by Mariano in the House.
Unfortunately, that's a very familiar story.
Former teacher, too.
There's a long list of things that, never mind whether you agree or disagree with a policy, but we can't even talk about it.
Have you two thought about what you're going to do when Mariano and Spilka vote to deport both of you from Massachusetts? Is that... Will we discuss that next time?
We're planning our 5-month vacation. That's all.
You're going to have your passports with you at all times.
You two, stay in touch with us. We're really interested in this. Stipendreform.com.
And I'm serious. Congratulations to both of you for doing this, because it's a tough work but needed work.
Good luck to you.
We've struggled to find something that we think will generate public interest, public conversation, and ultimately public action.
Well, I hope you're right.
I hope we're right.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you so much for coming in. Jennifer Nassour is the finance chair for the MassGOP, a former chair of the Republican Party in the state and founder of the Pocketbook Project. Jay Kaufman is a former state representative and founder of the Beacon Leadership Collaborative. Together, with the Coalition to Reform Our Legislature, they are seeking to change the way the State House does business. This is a bipartisan group, one Democrat, one Republican.
A lot of Republicans, a lot of Democrats.
The website, again, is mail...
No, don't do it. Stipendreform.com.
Okay, stipendreform.com. I thought the other one meant males need to reform. I'm not sure.
we can
that may be true too.
Okay.
Good to see you.
Stipendreform.com. Thank you so much for coming in.
Take care.
Coming up after this quick break, GBH Executive Vice Editor Jared Bowen joins us here in Studio 3. We're going to talk about the ongoing controversy about big-time comics, Dave Chappelle, Kevin Hall, Bill Burr, and others performing in Saudi Arabia. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live on youtube.com/GBH News.
Tom Johnson was a top White House aide to LBJ, also a major newspaper publisher, and eventually the president of CNN. But despite his success, he spent many years suffering from depression and silence.
You can talk about a broken arm or a broken leg, but talking about a broken mind, it's tough to do.
I'm Elsa Chang. How mental health advocacy is becoming another part of Tom Johnson's legacy on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Bartlett Tree Experts, a scientific tree care company providing species-specific care for trees and shrubs for over 118 years. More at bartlett.com. And The Lyric Stage, presenting Our Town, an American classic for our time. Even in the smallest of moments, beauty is there, and the secret to life is to stop and take notice. September 19th through October 19th at Lyric Stage Boston. Tickets at lyricstage.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browder, Marjorie Egan. We're not live at the library. You know this already. We are streaming youtube.com/GBH News. They're fixing everything at the library, hopefully next week. Joined now in Studio 3 by Jared Bowen, GBH News Executive Arts Editor, host of The Culture Show. Airs daily here at 89.7 at 2 p.m. Today, they're launching, this is very exciting. We'll talk about this in a minute. They're launching their movie club series with Back to America. Jared, how are you?
Well, how are you?
So, Jared, before we start, we have something we wanted to broach with you.
Uh-oh.
Marjorie and I went out to dinner. No, Marjorie and I went out to dinner last night, not together. But it turned out we ended up, this is unbelievable, at the exact same restaurant.
Whoa.
Okay, so Marjorie's sitting with whoever she was with. I am sitting with somebody we all know who, well, let's call him let's call him Chris, for example.
Right.
And he's a relatively connected person in town. And through the whole dinner, he's not a whiner, unlike me. Would you agree, Marjorie?
No one can quite keep up with you, Jim.
Okay, thank you. He's not a whiner, but several times during dinner, we're at this restaurant, a really nice restaurant. I'll tell you what it is in a minute. He says, I can't even get a reservation here, ever. I can never get a reservation. He's complaining. Okay, so dinner's over. Marjorie joins us for a minute. All three of us are walking out, and we go talk to Richard, who's this really good-looking, suave. He runs the restaurant there at night. It's Toscano's on Charles Street.
It's a great
and this is after
place.
our friend, quote, Chris, is complaining he can't get a reservation. As we're leaving, Richard turns to the three of us and points to a table. He says, you know what that table is? And we said, no. He says, that's Jared's table. Jared, it's the best table in the house, by the way. Jared always sits at that table whenever he comes in. So Our friend was mortified. We were humiliated.
Well, I had been sitting at that
Jared's table.
Actually,
you were at the Jared table?
I was at the Jared table without Jared.
So this is Toscano, which is a fabulous restaurant. Richard was a great guy. How do you get a table at Toscano's?
Toscano is my favorite restaurant.
Okay.
I go there a lot. I love Richard. I adore him.
He's fabulous.
And we talk theater when I go in. We talk about current events.
My question. Okay,
and
good.
So it's just about relationship building.
Oh, excuse me.
If you had a table kind of in the spotlight at a restaurant, would you not like to see Jared Bowen in that table,
Oh,
Jim?
no, please, no.
No, really.
I think that would be...
I would say I'd like Jim Browdy. I mean, if you really
well,
want
obviously,
some play
Richard
for your
does not
restaurant.
agree.
Okay, in any case, Jared, congratulations.
That is
We're
so
all
funny.
jealous. That was fabulous.
Okay. So I mentioned there's this big brouhaha about comedians Bill Burr, Kevin Hart, Dave Chappelle going over to perform in Saudi Arabia. Here's Mark Maron, the great podcaster. I think he's retired from the podcasting now, hasn't he? Or he will soon.
I don't know. Go ahead.
Anyway,
at the end.
Here's his bit about the festival from a week ago.
There's a Riyadh Comedy Festival. I don't know if you heard about that. Saudi Arabia Comedy Festival. I mean, how do you even promote that? You know, like from the folks that brought you 9/11. I mean, the same guy that's going to pay them is the same guy that paid that guy to bonesaw Jamal Khashoggi and put him in a fucking suitcase. But don't let that stop the yucks. It's going to be a good time.
I love him for that. That was great. I love Dave Chappelle, but really, I love Bill Burr, but really, I mean, this is like, the golf tour, all the other people that get paid. Brady denies it. He's allegedly being paid $75 million to play flag football. I think it's a disgrace. I mean, what's your take on this?
Well, yeah, I went into this kind of thinking I would have the same take as I do with the Kennedy Center, that if you have an opportunity, especially as an American, where you're used to, for the most part, free speech and being able to say whatever you want, to go to Saudi Arabia and have an audience, presumably in the thousands, as part of this comedy festival, why wouldn't you go say that and do that and try to disrupt the system? However, then it became clear, as one of the people who was invited, who declined to go there, wrote, the condition upon which you're performing comedy in Saudi Arabia is that you can't perform any material that degrades, defames, brings into the public disrepute, contempt, scandal, anything about the country, the royal family, or religion. So basically, I don't know what all of these people are going to do, and I wouldn't really want the repercussions if I was going to violate that and say that. So I think the best thing for these comedians to do is turn down the money. And a lot of them, we're talking about something in the neighborhood of a few $100,000 to $1-something million. Dave Chappelle, I'm sure, is being paid a lot more.
You were talking about David Cross, one of the comedians that was criticized. Yeah. He said something like, do you really need a fourth house? Do you really need a bigger yacht? I totally agree. I mean, this is the expression, which is not mine. They're comedy washing. They're providing cover for the Saudis, who have among the worst human rights records in the world, by doing this thing.
Well, and a lot of these comedians actually have addressed the issues in Saudi Arabia in their sets over the years here in America. So they've already criticized the government. It's come back on at least one comedian who was reportedly disinvited from the festival. So not only is it Saudi Arabia whitewashing, but it's the comedians sanitizing their own content just to fill up the bucket.
Yeah, by the way, one of the things they can't do is can't criticize the royals.
Yeah, he said that.
Oh, you said that. Okay.
Can't criticize the royal family.
We're talking to Jared Bowen, who has his own table at Toscano's on Charles Street.
Dolly Parton is having some health issues. You did a great interview with her.
Oh, was I jealous about that?
Yeah, but since we can't talk about her without hearing some of her music, before we talk about her, let's play some of her classic 1980 song. Oh, we don't have that.
No, we don't. But so what's going on?
We don't have that.
No, we don't. She was going to do Residence or something?
Well, we were going to hear a lot of her songs. This was huge. This is one of the biggest events in the cultural world this year. She was going to do a series of 6 concerts at Caesar's Palace that was going to happen in December. And she has just released this statement saying that she's having health challenges, that she has to have some procedures that are done that are not of the surgical facelift variety. She hasn't explained anything more than that. And for that reason, these concerts have to be postponed to September 2026. So a lot of people are having a moment right now trying to figure out what's going on, because Dolly Parton is so vibrant. She's so forthright and forthcoming about everything. And this is cloaked in a bit of secrecy. She is 79 years old.
She just lost her husband, right?
And he was in his early 80s. So it's been a difficult year. A lot of people were also wondering why she couldn't accept the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. That was to happen this fall. They've been at pains now to explain that there was already a conflict of interest. She was never actually going to attend the ceremony. It was always going to be done from Nashville. But yeah, a lot of people are very concerned.
Here's a little piece of her with Jared Bowen.
This particular story is based during the Depression. But it was, our whole life was depression as far as like how we, grew up not having money or things that you could buy at the store. So we learned to live off the land. We learned to, for Christmas, we had homemade toys and our mom and dad would make their things. And we were lucky if we got a store-bought toy. But we had so much joy and so much fun making things for each other.
It makes me happy just listening to her.
She's great.
She's done wonderful civic-minded kinds of things. Briefly, she was going to do, I think, 6 concerts or something. Yep. When did this residency thing start? The first one I ever heard was Billy Joel at Madison Square Garden, who's been there. We talked to Billy Joel a few years ago, and he was told, was it 20 in a row or whatever the hell it was there? They do a lot of this in Las Vegas. Is this a relatively new phenomenon or
not too new? It started really with Elvis, I think. That's my first concept of it. But then it was maligned for a long time. And basically, you were laughing stock if you were playing Vegas, because that meant you were at the end of your career and you were battling with the all-night buffets in order to be on stage. But then, remember, it's significant, Caesar's Palace here, because Celine Dion moved to Vegas and she did her residency there. And Caesar's Palace built out this theater that was extraordinary with this incredible climate control, because, as I just learned from Melissa Rivers, actually, when talking about her mother, Joan, the reason her mother's voice was so raspy was for all the nights that she did in Vegas and the really, really dry air there and what that did to her voice.
Oh, really?
So that's why they built out this theater that then made it okay for people like everybody from Bette Midler to Celine Dion to Adele and Dolly Parton to be able to go there and do these big nights and have people travel all over the world to do this. So I think that's when it came back, was with Celine Dion. Can I just tell you, this is a little unprofessional of me, but I remember, speaking of just hearing her voice during that interview, I remember sitting in that room, it was at the Colonial Theater, just thinking, it's Dolly Parton. It's Dolly Parton. It's Dolly Parton. It's Dolly Parton. I couldn't even think of the next question. It's Dolly Parton. It's Dolly Parton. I mean, how can you not?
The same way.
Yeah, no. She's so. I remember feeling that once with Jane Fonda.
Yeah.
And we were just in a room together for like a half an hour before he went on stage at the Coolidge Corner. I was surprised. First of all, she's not very tall. I was surprised. I felt like I towered over her. She was so nervous. This famed actress has won all these Academy Awards until she got on the stage, and then she was like a powerhouse.
And then she held them,
Yeah, it was amazing.
The other special part of that, so when she was talking about this show is about, she was doing this holiday show at the Colonial Theater, and right after the interview, I sat down to watch the show, as did she. I don't know if I ever told you this. She her seats were right behind mine, and she was singing along to her own songs during the show. So it was this bizarre world. My friend is next to me kicking my leg. Can you believe this? Dolly Parton is singing her own music behind us as it's happening on stage. It was such a surreal night.
Okay, so we went to a dress rehearsal for Hills of California. You had not yet seen it when we saw it, and we had 2 of the leads who were brilliant, and Loretta Greco, who's the artistic director at the Huntington, who was the director of this. Here's a little bit of Loretta with us on the show. I guess it was last month. Here she is.
This play is about family and about reckoning with the past. And it's really cool because it actually does have the past directly colliding with the present. So it is it is present in terms of how it continues to inform. And it's about the slipperiness of truth in the hands of 4 sisters.
Loretta was like a force of nature in the studio.
Yeah, she was
incredible. What do you think?
I really, really enjoyed this. This is a drama that's in the vein of, I think, Eugene O'Neill, Tennessee Williams, later Tracy Letts with August Osage County, except this is taking place in England, in Blackpool, England. So it's not necessarily the American story, but you have a group of 4 sisters who are coming home because their mother is dying. And we know what kind of moment in one's life life that is, that suddenly you're looking back at everything your mother represented, everything that was ever said, everything that was ever done, and you're taking suddenly stock of your own life because you're measuring time now. And so as I'm sure you were mesmerized too, this set that literally turns, so it spins us back in time. So we start with having these sisters come home, and then it spins us back to about 20 years earlier in the 1950s when their mother, who is just trying, their single mother is just trying to get them up and out in a really good way, we think, by turning them into a version of the Andrew sisters, who of course were real-life Andrew sisters, famous for Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy. But she has this concept that if she can just make her daughters into a girl group and get them to California and get them into the United States and have this land of opportunity before them, then everything will be okay. But because this is a drama in the vein of O'Neill or Tennessee Williams, it's really not okay. And so that becomes the fulcrum of this, is the girls having to recognize what happened in their life and what that means for their present life.
Before you go ahead, a texter reminded me, Dolly Parton gave $1 million to Vanderbilt University to help develop the COVID vaccine. So in addition to all the incredible things she has done, one of the stories that Loretta told us, Marjorie mentioned Loretta, her relationship, Loretta Greco's relationship with Sam Shepard.
Oh,
and
yes.
She said, I don't remember this exactly, but the steep stairs, do you remember what she said? The steep stairs in the set had something to do or were borrowed from something.
I think she said that
Shepard
he
had
had
done with her.
Something like that in a previous play.
And she was borrowing it as a memorial to him.
Nice.
Celebration
She also
of
talked
him.
about how difficult it was to concentrate on getting your work done.
With Sam Shepard in the room?
Yeah, only the best-looking man who ever lived. By the way, that's at the Huntington till when?
That's at the Huntington until October 12th.
Yeah.
So you had on your show a great interview about Christopher Marlowe, who was a writer at the time of William Shakespeare, a new book. Tell us about it.
This was so enjoyable.
It was fascinating.
And so difficult to believe, but also how fabulous that a book set in the 1500s, the Elizabethan era, can be a page-turner. But it is. It's written by the Pulitzer Prize winner Stephen Greenblatt, who has spent a lot of time in this realm, has done a lot of work in the realm of Shakespeare, a lot of research, scholarly work. He's a Harvard University professor. So his new book is Dark Renaissance, The Dangerous Times and Fatal Genius of Shakespeare's Greatest Rival. Well, the reason I love biographies is they're not simply about the person, in this case Christopher Marlowe, but they're also about a time and an era and the atmosphere and tone. And this was a wretched time in Elizabethan England. He posits that it was a bit of a cultural backwater when you find what's happening throughout the rest of Europe. Not as much culturally is happening in England, but they're trying. And so you have a city where Elizabeth has been on the throne for quite some time. She wants to vanquish anybody who is going to criticize her or have any contrary view. As Protestant, definitely trying to keep the Catholics at bay. So people are being rounded up and quartered and disemboweled and beheaded and castrated on street corners all the time. The public is gathering to see this. It's very rare that it becomes so violent, although it did in a couple of occasions that he points out that they actually turn their nose and they have to leave. But this is what society is. So enter into this Christopher Marlowe, who's this young man from a impoverished family in Canterbury. His father is a cobbler, but he gets a scholarship, so he gets to go to Cambridge. In university in those days, you're completely closed off from the world. They just want you to settle down and be focused, and this is where he begins these remarkable translations of Ovid and others. But he also gets this very independent streak, and as I've just outlined, independence is not welcome in Elizabethan England, so this sets him on a pretty fiery path. He's conscripted into a spy ring that's supposed to infiltrate the Catholics in France so they can understand just who exactly is coming after Elizabeth. He continues this writing, involves Shakespeare at one point. They collaborate, so they're rivals but collaborators, and then meets a very terrible end at only 29 years old. So it's a remarkable story.
29.
Yeah.
By the way, there's a great review, the Associated Press review, that begins by Anne Levin. The English poet and playwright Christopher Marlowe was born in 1564, same year as his frenemy, William Shakespeare. Unless you majored in English, and you probably haven't heard of him, except you have. And then the writer writes, Marlowe was the guy who wrote of Helen of Troy. Was this the face that launched 1,000 ships? Who penned the much imitated line, "Come live with me and be my love"? I mean, really, it's really great. I am dying to read this thing. It sounds great.
That's the joy of this book, because not only do you get all of the sensationalism that's happening in these sensational acts, but Stephen Greenblatt wages this incredible dissection of this literature and why it literally sings still, and what he was doing was so revolutionary that Greenblatt argues that he actually was the primary force behind launching the English Renaissance.
And what was the reason for his murder?
Well, that's up for debate. So the Queen apparently signed off on it, but maybe he was a little too expressive for people's tastes. What was recorded to history is that he didn't pay his bill, but that doesn't quite add up.
Yeah.
His dinner bill.
Yeah, wasn't he stabbed to death in a bar or something like that?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
So what's we talked about this last week, but actually we're both excited about this a lot, and I'm sure you are and your colleagues. What's with the movie deal starting this? The first one is this afternoon, right?
It is this afternoon.
Okay, tell us about it.
So we've started this Wednesday watch party. We'll do it the first Wednesday of every month. And as we've been talking about on the air, we'll give you time to watch it. This afternoon's is Coming to America, the 1988 comedy starring Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall and James Earl Jones. And so we invite people to come talk about it with us. The us is Callie, Edgar, and I will spend some time. We've all just recently watched the film. I watched it 2 nights ago. We'll talk about it. Does it hold up? What did you find interesting? What was surprising? Could it be remade today? And then the second half of the segment will take calls. So I can give you that number if you want to write it down. It's 617-300-3838. Again, 617-300-3838. I mean, even if you started watching it now, you'd be in time you'd be able to watch the full film.
Why don't you have the same number as we do?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I wondered the same thing, actually.
Okay. Say the number one more time. I'm sorry, Marty. One more time.
It's 617-300-3838.
Okay, I'm sorry.
This wasn't part of your packet, but a texter just reminded us of Cat Stevens having to cancel his North American tour, which is supposed to start tomorrow in Philadelphia because of visa issues getting into the country.
Speaking of Cat Stevens, by the way, if people haven't read our friend Lucy's fabulous book, Lucy Whiteman.
Yep, Lucy Whiteman.
Her fabulous book, also known as Princess Cheyenne, probably the most famous stripper in the history of the combat zone. Right. Her fabulous autobiography includes in detail her relationship and almost marriage to Cat Stevens. So it's really worth a read.
So he says you waited months to get the visa approvals and still some are missing, so they had to cancel the whole show.
Well, I can tell you that this is happening at so many places. This is happening to museums who are trying to get artists to come here to do installations or try to get their work here. It's happening to performing arts organizations. Cat Stevens was to perform at the Bach Center. That concert has now been postponed. So myriad groups are dealing with this right now. Visa issues that cannot be untangled.
Wow. Okay.
It's really harming the arts. So just text me whenever you want to get into Toscano, and I will. I'll arrange it. It's such
by the way, there was no exaggeration in the story. Our friend, who is the least arrogant person I know, was joking about inability to get a reservation in Toscano, and then we're leaving right after talking about it, and Richard stops us to point to Jared's table.
That's right.
It was really.
You're burying the secondary lead here.
What was the secondary lead?
Well, since Jared wasn't at his table that night, that table went to Marjorie.
I think that is
Jim
hilarious.
was relegated to the other, around the corner in the other room.
We actually had a very nice table. Thank you very much.
It is a great restaurant. And Richard is so lovely, and it's a wonderful place. It's on Beacon Hill. It's really picturesque.
And in Cambridge, one in Central Square, too.
Yeah.
And Harvard Square, which is great,
But isn't that the most beautiful part of Boston? Charles Street with the beautiful shops and looking right across at the public garden and Boston Common and all the the old brick sidewalks and the old lights. It's just a beautiful, beautiful part of Boston.
Warm and friendly and all things great.
Yeah. Okay.
Everything else say no. I'm really excited about this movie. I'm really excited about this movie.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Great idea.
It was so fun for me to watch it because I don't think I had seen that since I was a kid.
Me neither.
When I get in trouble because there are bare breasts in that movie, so I was not allowed to watch that movie.
What year did it come out?
1988.
I was 72 in 1988. It's incredible, but I remember it sort of.
And Eddie Murphy is so young in it too. That's what it's so kind of almost disturbing to go back and watch these movies. Of course, I was watching as a kid, and he's like this old guy in this movie, and now I'm I'm way older than Eddie Murphy in that movie.
Okay.
See ya.
Jared Bowen.
Bye, Jared
Thank you
Bowen.
very much.
Bye.
The movie club that we just were talking about, series Back to America, today.
Coming to America.
Coming to America. Sorry.
They're doing Back to America next month.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
It's okay.
We've been speaking, Judith's here too, with Jared Bowen, GBH News executive arts editor and host of The Culture Show. It airs daily right after us here on 89.7.
He's not at the library.
The movie
either, by the
is
way.
Coming to America. Coming up after this quick break, just enough time in the hour for Jim's favorite segment, Two More Things. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. At The Culture Show, we're launching our Wednesday Watch Party, revisiting classic films and asking, do they hold up? Do they hit differently today? What do we see now that we missed before? First up, the 1988 comedy, Coming to America.
Good morning, my neighbor!
Join me, Callie Crossley, and Edgar B. Horwick III. Add your voice today at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and the DeMoore McKim School of Business at Northeastern University, where MBA and master's degree students can build vital business skills through experience. Learn more at northeastern.edu/business. And Liberty Mutual Insurance. Liberty believes progress happens when people feel secure and exists to help people embrace today and pursue tomorrow. Learn more at libertymutual.com.
Welcome back to BPR, Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. I know you're tired of this, but we are not at the library, and we're not going to be at the library this week. We hope we are next week. We'll keep you apprised. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. It's time for Two More Things, where we talk about, two more things. Marjorie, what's your one more thing?
Well, very quickly, it's time to call these anti-vax people out for what they really are. They're very selfish. They're all about their own kids, and they don't really care about the children who may not be able to get vaccinated because they're immunocompromised for some reason, or maybe they're going through cancer treatment. Imagine if you had a child with some kind of illness who couldn't get vaccinated because of their medical problems. But because of these anti-vaxxers, now you're expected to go to school and sit next to people who might give you measles, mumps, or chicken pox, or one of these diseases that if you are immunocompromised, people, you don't usually die from those diseases, you usually recover, but sometimes you do if you have bad health issues. So anyway, they're up at the State House, invited by Republicans. They were there last week, selling books, by trashing Anthony Fauci and praising the hell out of RFK Jr. And one of the books was called I'm Unvaccinated and That's Okay. I think these people should be called on the carpet for why they think it's okay for them to put other children at risk because they have these wacky, non-scientific ideas about vaccines.
I am really glad you did that. I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's really important. And so there was a productive one more thing. You're not totally enamored of the segment, let's be honest. And so there, you feel good about that or you don't?
I feel good about that, and I think these people should be, like I said, called out for what they are, extremely selfish.
Okay. So Jimmy Kimmel. Everybody knows that when he had his return after he's put back on the air, that a huge audience. Was it 6 or 7 million people? It was really huge.
Huge.
And I'm embarrassed.
It was like 20 million on YouTube.
Well, that's right. It was like the biggest YouTube hit of the year
ever.
And so while I watched, I think virtually the whole, at least monologue, the next day, I hadn't watched since, and I was worried, even though I have great respect for Jimmy Kimmel, that he wasn't going to stay tough and be who he is, making fun of politicians, including Trump and other people. Well, not to worry. Here's a little bit of what he's had to say at the expense of some leaders in this country since he returned to the air.
Vice President Maybelline was making the rounds. How did we wind up with a president and a vice president who wear more makeup than Kylie Jenner and Lady Gaga combined? Donald Trump actually said our new military will bring back new focus on fitness. I love the idea that Trump is lecturing these guys on fitness. I mean, if that isn't the fondue pot calling the kettle fat, I don't know what is.
Well, that's very little bit of Jimmy Kimmel in the number of days. And even better was Kimmel and Colbert came together. I totally love this. And on the other show, here's a sound of Kimmel being interviewed by Colbert. I think it was just last night. Here it is.
Thank you for having me. I am so honored to be here with my fellow no-talent late-night loser.
That's right.
To stick together, you
My
know?
fellow late-night no-talent loser. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
By the way, it was one other common thing beyond the fact that they both obviously suffered under the hand of Donald Trump. A lot of people reach out to them, a lot of famous people to show them support. You know who reached out to both of them? A local guy. JT, James Taylor, Massachusetts' finest,
good
was
for
one of the
him.
first people to reach out, I read, to both Kimmel and Colbert.
Well, you know what I think it's worth pointing out? That
What's
Harvard
that?
University is not holding up. We thought they were going to stand up. They're not really standing up. The colleges all the country are folding. Elite law firms are folding. All these people are folding. However, the stand-up late-night comics
That's a
are
great
standing
point.
up.
That is a really fine point.
With a really aggressively standing up. So I find
At
that
great personal risk.
at great personal risk. Yeah.
Sacrifice, at least, I should say.
Yeah. Okay.
Good point.
Okay. We are done for this hour, but coming up after the 1 o'clock news, retired Federal Judge Nancy Gertner joins us to talk about a scathing ruling from a Boston judge on Trump's efforts to revoke visas for pro-Palestinian protesters, and the Supreme Court's decision that it's okay to racial profile if you are an ICE officer. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Federal funding for public media stations, including GBH, is officially gone. That means your support is even more vital to ensuring we can keep the trusted news you value on the air. Help fund the future of GBH. Give at gbh.org.
Support for GBH comes from you. And the Trustees, presenting Halloween on the Hill, a celebration of autumn at the Trustees Long Hill in Beverly, running Wednesday through Saturday nights until October 30th. Advance tickets required. Learn more at thetrustees.org/Halloween. And Newbury Court, serving Concord, Massachusetts for 30 years as a not-for-profit continuing care retirement community dedicated to older adults. More at newburycourt.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browder, head on Hour 3 of BPR, live on the air, but not at the library. Next week, the Supreme Court heads into a new term with a lot hanging in the balance, from birthright citizenship, yeah, we thought that was resolved too, to an expected attempt somewhere down the line, if Clarence Thomas has his way, to overturn the court's 2015 ruling on same-sex marriage. We'll check in with retired Federal Judge Nancy Gertner on all that and get her thoughts on a Boston judge's ruling yesterday on free speech and campus protests.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then Massachusetts Congresswoman Presley caps off our Tuesday, zooming in to talk about her and her Democratic colleagues' role in the first full-blown government shutdown since 2018. That's all next on the third hour of BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Kristen Wright. The government is shut down, and it's hard to say how long it'll last. The Senate gave voting another try today, but both measures failed again. Senate lawmakers couldn't get stopgap funding bills through yesterday either. House Speaker Mike Johnson talked about the division on CNN today.
The reason we put a simple 7-week extension of government funding is to allow for all that debate. The month of October is going to be very important for us to determine all these things and to have a bipartisan discussion and deliberation over that. But we have to have the lights on in the building to do it.
Here's Democratic leader Chuck Schumer speaking on the Senate floor today before votes.
Donald Trump and Republicans have barreled us into a shutdown because they refuse to protect Americans' health care.
Many functions of the federal government have come to a halt. NPR's Scott Horsley reports that includes keeping tabs on the U.S. economy.
Historically, government shutdowns have caused limited fallout for the broader economy. Forecasters at Deutsche Bank estimate that if the shutdown drags on, it could shave about 0.2% off GDP for each week the government remains shuttered. One casualty of the shutdown is the September jobs report, which was supposed to be released on Friday. That report, and possibly others, will be delayed until the government reopens. That leaves business people and policymakers guessing as to whether the summer slowdown in job growth continued into the fall. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
The Supreme Court says Federal Reserve Board Governor Lisa Cook can keep her job for now. The court will hear arguments in the case in January. President Trump accuses Cook of mortgage fraud and wants her fired. She denies doing anything illegal and isn't charged with a crime. Cook also maintains the president lacks the power to fire her. President Trump announced a 20-point plan to end Israel's war in Gaza and free hostages held by Hamas. The plan also states Israel will not occupy Gaza and that Palestinians will not be forcibly displaced outside of the territory. But it doesn't lay out a clear role for Palestinian governance. NPR's Anas Baba reports from Gaza.
There were no celebrations here after Trump announced his plan for ending Israel's war that's killed tens of thousands of Palestinians. Abu Adham al-Rafati is among many Palestinians recently displaced from Gaza City due to Israeli bombardment. He says Trump's proposal only makes demands of the Palestinians and serves Israel's interests. Other NPR spoke to in Gaza echoed that sentiment. Al-Rafati say no external powers should rule over the Palestinians, but that Hamas should have no ruling governance after its deadly attack on Israel 2 years ago. Hamas has yet to agree to the plan. Regional powers, including Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and others, said they stand ready to work toward finalizing the agreement. Anas Baba, Gaza City.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good afternoon with the latest from the GBH newsroom in Boston. I'm Craig Lamolt. Worcester City leaders are reaffirming that local police will not help with federal immigration enforcement. Last night, the Worcester City Council passed a resolution prohibiting police from partnering with ICE. The measure is mainly symbolic since the city had already directed police not to work with federal immigration agents. But Councilor Christian King says the resolution sends a message that Worcester stands with its immigrant communities.
Worcester will not be complicit in a program that criminalizes families and disproportionately targets communities of color. Let's be the kind of city that leads with compassion, justice, and inclusion.
Nearly a quarter of Worcester residents are foreign-born. Counselors say many people aren't going to the doctor or to school for fear of running into ICE agents. ICE has not responded to a request for comment. Shannon O'Brien is back on the job as Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commissioner chair. O'Brien is leading her first commission meeting in 2 years today after a state judge reinstated her to her post last month. In 2023, the chair was suspended and later fired by her boss, State Treasurer Deb Goldberg, over allegations of workplace misconduct. O'Brien denied those claims, and the judge found that Goldberg's evidence was weak. At the start of today's meeting, Goldberg addressed her reinstatement.
But as a new beginning, we have the chance to build bridges, repair trust, and focus on solutions that strengthen both the commission and the cannabis industry.
Goldberg says she wants Massachusetts to be a leader when it comes to cannabis regulation, innovation, and equity. Sunny today, a high in the mid-60s, mostly clear tonight, and tomorrow looks sunny with a high just above 60.
I see this moment not as a return, but as a new beginning.
This is GBH.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on Thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com. And from the Doris Duke Foundation.
He's Jim Brady. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. We apologize we're not at the library today. We won't be here all this week because of continuing technical problems. We hope to be back there next week. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. Join us now on Zoom for another edition of On the Docket. We're joined by retired Federal Judge Nancy Gertner. Judge Gertner is a senior lecturer at Harvard Law School and a BPR contributor. Hey, Judge, how are you?
How are you?
Good.
Very well, Judge Gertner. So first, I wanted to ask you about the Supreme Court's decision to allow Lisa Cook, who's a governor, I guess they call him, on the Federal Reserve, to keep her job. Trump was trying to get rid of her, claiming that she was claiming 2 houses as primary residences for tax purposes. What do you think? Is this any bigger thing here?
Well, the Supreme Court, while it has been trying to implement this concept of a unitary executive, which means all the power resides in the president, and independent boards can't be independent of the president's desire to hire and fire. The difficulty the court has from the beginning in one of the shadow docket emergency decisions carved out the Federal Reserve. And some scholars are saying carved it out not for any principled reason, that somehow the structure of the Federal Reserve was different than the boards that the president can hire and fire from. But this is different because if the Federal Reserve is not independent, it will tank the economy. So they have telescoped, they were carving out a restriction on the unitary executive, the power of the president to fire, with respect to this particular board, the Federal Reserve. And that's what they have been telescoping, and that's what this reflects.
So, Judge Gertner, yesterday, a huge decision out of Boston. You served with William Young, I assume?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
And you also wrote a really interesting piece that relates to William Young, which we'll get to in a second. Explain what he did yesterday in the strongest of terms around free speech issues.
Well, first thing he said is everyone in the United States, whether they are citizens or non-citizens, are subject to have the protections of the First Amendment, period, full stop. There are no gradations of residence in the U.S. Once you're on American soil, you have the protections of the First Amendment. And that was a critical thing to say, because obviously this administration does not believe that that's the case. So that's one thing he said, and that was so with respect to visa holders, with respect to green card holders. He went through all the cases of all the individuals that we've all been reading about who either had their visa revoked, like the Tufts student several months ago, or their green card, they were detained notwithstanding a green card, like Mohsen Modawi, the student in Vermont, Columbia student who lives in Vermont. But he said really categorically the First Amendment applies. The First Amendment does not say the Congress shall make no law abridging freedom of speech except for foreigners. It doesn't say anything like that. He then went on an extraordinary detailed finding about the ways in which the Trump administration, from the president on down, essentially we're going against these individuals solely for their ideas, and how that violated the bedrock First Amendment principles. What's significant about that is the amount of time that he spent going through the facts. We talk a great deal on this program about the way the Supreme Court has given the back of the hand to many district court judges' decisions. What's significant about this is it is harder for the court to do that when a district court judge makes what we call findings of fact. In other words, when he says, I find this witness credible, I have read the record, I have drawn inferences from the record, and here's what I conclude. That's the kind of conclusion that the district court is largely responsible for.
I'm sorry,
and then there are various language throughout, which is quite stunning, in which he criticizes the president, in which he, I don't know whether you have to, really, Jim and Martha, you have to read the whole thing. The facts prove that the president himself approves truly scandalous and unconstitutional suppression of free speech. It's not the kind of stuff.
Wait, keep going on. He says in the next sentence, one would imagine the corrective action would follow as a matter of course from the appropriate authorities, yet nothing will happen. Wow.
Right. Nor will there be any meaningful public outcry that essentially ICE has nothing whatever to do with criminal law. Despite the meaningless but effective worst of the worst rhetoric, ICE has nothing whatever to do with criminal law enforcement. And then he deals with masks. Now, that's not essential to his decision, but he thought it needed to be said.
So speaking of Judge Young, with whom you served on the bench, as we said a minute ago, you wrote a really, really terrific piece, I thought, about the strained relationship, not your words, mine, between the Supreme Court and some of the district court judges, like you were and like Young is. And by the way, Young was a Ronald Reagan appointee, for whatever it's worth, so people know. Could you summarize what the points you made in that piece, Judge Gertner?
Well, I started off by talking about how I was appalled that Judge Young had been singled out in the last case that went up to the Supreme Court, where Justice Gorsuch said, lower courts can, that defying the Supreme Court, he said, was not an option. Clearly directing that at Judge Young, who in that case had ruled differently than the Supreme Court was ruling in the on this emergency decision. It was extraordinary that the Supreme Court singled out a district court judge to trash. Judge Young the next day went into court. I think he was actually hearing evidence in this case, and he seemed to have apologized. In his lengthy career, he's never defied the Supreme Court. I was troubled that he even said that. Justice Breyer, a few days later, said Judge Young is a very good judge. I was troubled that they even had to do that. And I contrasted the apology with what Judge Alison Burroughs did in the Harvard Grant cases. There's a famous footnote, only nerds read footnotes, but this is a footnote you should read, in which she essentially says, how can we possibly be defying decisions which essentially are incoherent? And she was
by the Supreme Court. And she was less than, I've forgotten her language, less than coherent decisions of the Supreme Court. And what she was saying, which makes perfect sense, is the Supreme Court has held a whole bunch, has done a whole bunch of emergency orders. They range from one paragraph to 3 paragraphs. There's never been oral argument with respect to them. There are no briefing with respect to them, and oftentimes no one knows what they actually found. And in this article, I said they have essentially all of the authority of notes on a napkin. Because in fact, the judges who really want to follow the Supreme Court cannot figure out the grounds for the decision. Also, only a few months ago, the Supreme Court had said that rulings on the emergency docket are not precedent. And now all of a sudden they were doing a 180. And that makes sense that it wouldn't be precedent because they're not dealt with the degree of seriousness that a regular decision was. So, by the way, it was in the Contrarian on September 12th. It is it's a fabulous piece about something I was totally unaware of, and good for Burroughs and others who have the courage to stand up to the Supreme Court and say exactly what all of us are thinking. I'll tell you.
But I'm not a lawyer like you guys. Okay. So, but some of the things I just find so crazy to believe that they're doing, like saying it's okay, this is the Supreme Court, okay for ICE to be racially profiling. It's okay to send people
the LA case we're talking about.
Who are deported, not back to their own countries, but to, where was the one they were mentioning last week? It was some place that was so much in, was it Syria? Syria. And before that it was Sudan. I've asked you before about reading the minds of these justices, but how can, Alito and Clarence may be too far gone, but how do the other ones, I don't get how they can think these kinds of things are okay.
Well, so there's a technical issue. The technical issue is they're making a ruling on emergency orders. So they're determining whether or not someone has a likelihood of success down the line, predicting success down the line, and whether the government is irreparably harmed. So the first thing that they've been doing in these cases is saying that the government is irreparably harmed when it has to continue to do that which it has been doing for the past 100 years. That's an extraordinary finding, as opposed to the people who are being deported to third countries, or the people who are being arrested and detained illegally under ISIS authority. So the notion that irreparable harm is on the side of the government is unheard of. But these are emergency orders, and
but they're not emergencies. They're made up emergencies.
That's exactly right. They're made up emergencies. and down the line there will be a decision, and it's not unheard of that the final decision will be in favor of the people who are challenging Trump's policies. The problem is that may well be too late.
Exactly. I mean, the emergency seems to be the person who's shipped off to Sudan, South Sudan or something.
Marjorie, it's like you're saying, I'm sorry, it's like you're saying, how can they be in the tank to Donald Trump? They are in the tank to Donald Trump. That's how they can be in the tank to Donald Trump.
Yeah, but
why are you so incredulous? I'm sorry.
And they're also dealing with, again, there's a slipperiness to some of these decisions. So in the case, the birthright citizenship case that dealt with the appropriateness of a nationwide injunction, they say no nationwide injunction. They are putting procedural impediments to getting relief. You can't have a nationwide injunction. If you want to challenge being sent to a third party, a third country, you have to do it by habeas in each jurisdiction where you are, as opposed to nationwide. So some of it is very technical, throwing impediments to any kind of meaningful relief. That's no excuse. I was just reading today that 85% of the time Trump has been winning in the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Which is stunning.
So Marjorie is mentioning how can they do this? You're mentioning the birthright thing, which has been resolved repeatedly by the Supreme Court. Yet Trump wants them to look at it again, and I think they may. Which leads me to my latest, deepest concern. When Schumer, we mentioned this earlier in the show, when Schumer and Jeffries were in with Trump the other day talking about, possibly resolving the shutdown. Sitting on the Resolute desk were hats that said Trump 2028. And that's one. Here's Lindsey Graham, who I think used to be chair of the Judiciary Committee, which is really unbelievable. Senator from South Carolina. Here he is on Sean Hannity on Fox News talking about Trump's UN speech.
Trump 2028. I hope this never ends. God bless you, President Trump, for standing up in the UN and telling the world the way it is. We don't have to live this way. We don't have to live with a Europe that's buying Russian oil at the time we're all trying to stop the war with Russia and Ukraine. So I hope he runs again.
Trump 2028, I hope he runs again. And then there's this little thing called the 22nd Amendment, which says no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. And it goes on from there. So here's my latest great fear. Is the Supreme Court, Trump decides to run, totally incoherent. He's 83 years old, but everybody props him up and decides he wants to run. A Secretary of State says, or somebody, you can't because the Constitution says you can only serve twice. He appeals to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court says, well, they didn't mean in the 22nd Amendment non-consecutive terms. They meant only 2 consecutive terms, and since he's only served 2 non-consecutive terms, the 22nd Amendment doesn't apply. Trump runs for a 3rd term. Tell me that is ridiculous and is never going to happen.
That's ridiculous and it's never going to happen.
Do you believe that?
I do, actually.
Oh, good. Go ahead.
Just as I believe that the challenge to birthright citizenship will fail. If the Supreme Court, if these originalists care about the specific language of the amendment and the circumstances under which it was promulgated, there is simply no way that they can conclude otherwise about birthright citizenship or about the president running again. I want to say something also. This is sort of out of my league a little bit. Watching him the other day before the assembled military officers, I thought he was incoherent. I thought he was mumbling. So to some degree, Jim, it may be a moot point.
Well, I don't know if it's a moot point, but I hope you're right. And of course, they can never give him criminal immunity either, so that'll never happen. So here's one more I want you to disabuse me of. Here's Clarence Thomas speaking at the Center for the Constitution and the Catholic Intellectual Tradition at Catholic University of America's Columbus School of Law last week. Here he is.
I don't think that I have the gospel, and I don't think that any of these cases that have been decided are the gospel. And I do give respect to precedent, but the precedent should be respectful of our legal tradition and our country and our laws, and be based on something. not just something that somebody dreamt up and others went along with.
Meaning, I don't really believe in precedent if the precedent runs contrary to my political views. So my latest fear, and I know I'm not alone, based upon something he said in a dissent not too long ago, is the next target of the Clarence Thomas court, which is really what it is in my estimation, is Obergefell and same-sex marriage reversal. Is that preposterous too?
It's not preposterous that they will take it up again. It's not preposterous that there will be members of the court, notably Alito and Thomas, who will want to reverse Obergefell. I actually think that they will not necessarily get the rest of the court for not necessarily a legal reason, but a political reason, for the same reason that they have carved out Federal Reserve because of the implications of that. The president's power with respect to firing members of the Federal Reserve. Same-sex marriage, I don't think the outcome would be enormous, and the outcry would be enormous all across the country, even greater, I think, than the outcry with respect to Dobbs and the abortion decision. So I don't think so, but it will depend on Gorsuch, Barrett, and Roberts, and Kavanaugh. Alito and Thomas, you know where they are, but I think it will depend on
Why
that.
would they even take the case? Why do they take a birthright citizenship case? Why would they take a case which challenges the precedent of Obergefell? Why do they take it if it's already established law?
Well, because it only takes 4 of them to determine whether to take. And they may well have 4, but they don't have 5, and they certainly don't have 6. In other words, the cases that get up to the Supreme Court on cert don't necessarily predict the outcome, although they often do.
Okay, so before you've done a great job of assuring the likes of me that X, Y, and Z is not going to happen. Let's go back to those thrilling days of yesteryear. Are there any decisions they've rendered in the last couple of years which you said in advance they would never do?
Yeah, the immunity decision, Jim.
Okay.
How many times are you going to remind me?
Oh,
about
I know,
that?
but that's why I'm asking Judge Gertner. So one more time. So no one, especially someone with your brain power and resume, thought that could happen, and it happened, which suggests to me that they'll figure out a way to get to whatever desired result they have, as scandalous as it may be.
No, but what I was saying is there is a path to overturn Obergefell, which is essentially what Thomas said, which is it was wrongly decided from the beginning. But if as the 85% win rate for Trump suggests, they are actually paying attention to the politics of this, they shouldn't, but they are. This is not the case they're going to
that's a good point.
But here, let me try this again, because I don't get to talk to you very much, Judge Gertner. But Jim just mentioned brain power and resume, and I realize, that Kavanaugh and Barrett and Gorsuch, I think too, was he in the Federal Society as well? I think he was. They all came up. Okay, so that's a very conservative group of attorneys. I get that, but they're not like nuts, I think, for the most part. And that's what I find so shocking is that, Amy Barrett has got kids adopted from other countries. Why would they think that these kinds of things are okay?
Clarence Thomas is a beneficiary of affirmative action, and he admits it.
I've given up on him.
And he's against affirmative action.
I've given up on him. I've given up on him, and I've given up on Alito with the upside-down flag and claimed he didn't notice it and blah, blah, blah. And Clarence Thomas, I covered those hearings. I sat 20 feet from him. I thought he was a terrible liar then. I still think he's a terrible liar now. But anyway, I don't think the rest of them are necessarily horrible people. And the things that they're doing are often horrible things. And I don't know that the Federalist Society was that far gone that they thought things like sending people to South Sudan or denying due process to people or taking away First Amendment rights was okay. You know what I mean? So what's going on?
I think there was a view. I'm now checking my notes here. 3 of the justices who dissented in Obergefell are still on the court. So that's Thomas, Alito, and Roberts. And their position is essentially that the Constitution is not malleable and that there are no, if something was not understood at the time the Constitution was ratified, or fairly comprised by the language, then it's not something we can do now. And their dissent suggested that they should, just as with abortion, send same-sex marriage back to the states.
Yeah, that's another ridiculous position.
The question is whether Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett will go along with it. And I don't think that that's likely, but as Jim hastened to tell me many times, I've been wrong before. For example, I mean, in Thomas's dissent in Dobbs, he makes it clear that he wants to reconsider same-sex marriage. He makes it clear that he wants to unravel rights that were considered part of the Constitution in recent years.
He's anti-birth control.
Right, but he didn't. Right, but he didn't get. No one else joined in that.
No, well, otherwise they'd all have 12 children, but they don't.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I want to say that I think that to some degree, everyone was hoping that Justice Roberts would be the institutional anchor.
Marjorie, yeah.
Yeah, and he has lost all control over the court.
I should know the answer. I should know the answer to this, but when Thomas was listing in that dissent some things he thought should be re-examined, including Obergefell, same-sex marriage, he didn't include Loving versus Virginia, did he? By the way, he's married to a white woman, and Loving versus Virginia, I assume you all know, is interracial marriage.
Yeah, that wasn't originally in the Constitution,
was that on his list, or was that not on his list?
No, that was not. It was expressly not included.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so you can have some changes in the Constitution then, I guess. You can modernize in some areas, I guess, right?
Right, and like, for example, I was saying a moment ago, the cases that they've taken on an emergency basis that is essentially reconfiguring what emergency means.
Exactly.
When the federal government has been doing what it has been doing for the past 100 years, it's not an emergency when they have to continue. It is an emergency for the people who were laid off. It's an emergency for the foreign aid recipients. That's where the harm is. But the Supreme Court has really reconfigured that. So I guess in one sense, if we say that the court has been political in its decisions supporting this president, that political calculation arguably should militate against they're messing with same-sex marriage.
Judge Gertner, while you're here, can I broach one last thing with you, which we weren't intending to get to, but since you're still with us, what was your reaction to the Comey indictment? James Comey, former director of the FBI. Everybody knows the backdrop. The prior U.S. attorney appointed in Virginia by Trump refused to indict a Republican, of course, saying there's not enough evidence. Trump forces him out. He appoints a beauty queen who is an assistant in the White House who's never prosecuted a case, and she gets an indictment on one or two counts and not on another of Comey. What was your reaction to that?
Well, Jim, one of the things that you apparently have missed is that I and about 40 other judges wrote a letter decrying that, we'll talk about that again, decrying that indictment as essentially that when that indictment followed firing the U.S. attorney who found that there was not enough evidence, two U.S. attorneys, I believe, who one resigned and one was fired, then it raises the specter of vindictive prosecution, that you're going against the man and not the act, not the crime. I mean, that's the prototype, right? You don't like what Jim Browdy is doing, and so we will go through the code book to see if we can find something to pin on you. That's not the way it's supposed to happen. The way it's supposed to happen is you're supposed to investigate a crime, and that was not the case here. In addition, the indictment is incoherent. At the session where he was supposed to be arraigned on the indictment, this beauty queen U.S. attorney, there were two indictments that were presented to the judge, and the judge said, which is the right one? I mean, this is completely incoherent.
I saw her on TV. She was equally incoherent talking.
Right. I did not put on my resume to become a judge that I was the first runner-up homecoming queen at Flushing High School.
You were?
That's right.
Who won? Who won?
some blonde, blue-eyed person, not me. You know? So, I mean, if I had known that that was a thing, I would have put it on all of my resumes, which I will do from now on.
Yeah, you have to wear 10 times as much makeup and have 10 times bigger hair and 4-inch heels and really tight suits, and maybe you'll get somewhere in the Trump.
Next time.
Yeah, next time.
Can we keep you for one more minute? Because I want to get back to this. I really was impressed by this contrarian piece you wrote about Burroughs and Young and all these people. I know you talk to your former colleagues a lot. Is there, without identifying people, what's the feel in the federal judiciary now about things we've been talking about? Supreme Court, Trump administration, the 85% winning rate. What do you hear from your former colleagues?
I think that they feel under attack, under assault. I mean, it's not just, the president of the United States talking about rogue judges. It's not just articles of impeachment against 4 judges because some people in Congress disagree with them. It's also the level of threats, which are really profound and unheard of. I certainly had nothing like that when I was on the bench. But what's really interesting about this, and I've written about this, is they are doing their job.
Yeah.
Notwithstanding what Trump is saying, notwithstanding what legislators are saying, they are doing their job. 2 days after the Supreme Court says no nationwide injunctions unless you find there's a nationwide class, 2 judges found a nationwide class. So they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and what right now is the only backstop between us and this government.
No. We have one more backstop.
What is it?
The late night comics,
That's
Jimmy
true.
Kimmel and
That's
Stephen
true.
Colbert. They're standing up bravely against the Trump administration. I know I'm a broken record, but just one last thing, because they have to know, these justices, that to send someone to go back to South Sudan for the civil offense of coming over the country, there's the unusual punishment thing in the Constitution, right? Excessive punishment, all that kind of stuff. This is a civil thing. It isn't even a criminal thing. So they've got to know that there's a problem with this. I mean, these are, as you said, very smart people. And is it wanting to get invited to Republican, conventions somewhere, or go off to these hunting lodges or something? I mean, I don't know. I mean, we'll know years from now. Yeah.
I thought my speculation was that the Supreme Court, like the district courts, did not want to come up against a situation where they issued an order and the president ignored it.
Yeah, I think that's it.
And I thought that was the explanation for why essentially the court was kicking the can down the road, granting relief, but putting this on for oral argument or waiting until the case goes through the lower courts, just kicking the can down the road and not confronting that moment. But that moment is going to come.
Yes.
Yes. They will have to determine if they're going to stand up. But that's the only explanation.
Yeah.
It's an institutional explanation. It's the reason why the judges, with respect to the Trump indictments before he became president, had a hard time finding him in contempt, for the things he was saying out of court, because you just didn't want to confront that constitutional cliff.
Well, I think if Jimmy Kimmel can do it, the United States Supreme Court should be able to find some courage and do the. Well, they should.
It's true.
And
Judge Gertner, if I promise not to mention the immunity decision, you'll come back soon?
Yeah, I'll come back.
Okay.
I'll come back, but I can't. I don't think you have any control.
That's actually true.
You'll mention it again and again. So not to worry.
And I'll mention my same things again and again. I'm sorry, but I just can't get over this
Judge
stuff.
Gertner, it's great to see you.
Thank you very much, Judge Gertner, for being with us.
Be well.
We're speaking with retired federal judge Nancy Gertner, senior lecturer at Harvard Law School and a BPR contributor, and we really appreciate her talking to us. Coming up after this quick break, Congresswoman Presley joins us. She's going to talk about the impact of the government shutdown. The Congresswoman is next. He's Jim Browdy. I'm Marjorie Egan. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Tom Johnson was a top White House aide to LBJ, also a major newspaper publisher, and eventually the president of CNN. But despite his success, he spent many years suffering from depression and silence.
You can talk about a broken arm or a broken leg, but talking about a broken mind, it's tough to do.
I'm Elsa Chang, how mental health advocacy is becoming another part of Tom Johnson's legacy on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Minus 33 Merino Wool in Ashland, New Hampshire. Since 1916, makers of all-natural merino wool underwear, outerwear, and New Hampshire-made socks. Their merino wool clothing and accessories are available at minus33.com. And Minute Women Home Care, providing senior home care services to families in the Metro West Boston area for over 55 years. Services include dementia care, fall prevention, live-in, and 24-hour care. mwhomecare.com.
Welcome back to BPR. I'm Jim Browdy. She's Marjorie Egan. We're not live at the library, as you well know. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We hope to be back at the library next week. They're dealing with all the technical problems, and we'll let you know before week's over. Joined now live on Zoom by Congresswoman Presley. The Congresswoman represents Massachusetts' 7th Congressional District, including much of Boston and, most importantly to me, sections of Cambridge. Representative, it's good to see you.
Good to see you, Jim.
So, Congresswoman, members of your party, the Democrats, have decided that health care is where they're going to draw the line. They're not going to go along with the Republicans because millions of people's health care is at risk. What do you think is going to happen here?
Well, first, let me just say Democrats are making health care the priority because the people who sent us to Congress have insisted that we make health care a priority. When I pour over the emails, the letters, the transcribed phone calls into my office, this is what the people of the Massachusetts 7th are asking me to do. One, they want to see Democrats use their leverage and fight, and to not go quietly into the night and cede ground before you've even started to fight. So, that is exactly what we're doing in this moment. And when I consider the Massachusetts 7th, which is, one of the most unequal districts in the country, certainly the most unequal in our delegation, has some of the most disparate health care outcomes. And what has been game-changing in improving those outcomes are our community health centers, which are already being compromised because of the cruel cuts to Medicaid, impacting health care for some 15 million people. Our community health centers rely on those Medicaid reimbursements for revenue. And I have a district that has already lost 2 hospitals. We've lost one in Brighton, one in Dorchester. And this Republican spending bill will mean the closure of more hospitals, the closure of community health centers. It'll mean rising costs for people who receive their health care through the Affordable Care Act marketplace. People's health care costs could double. And that means that people will be making impossible and impossibly cruel choices between groceries, life-saving medication, and rent. So people are either going to get kicked off of their health care or their health care costs are going to go through the roof. And both are unforgivable and 100% preventable. And the other thing that I would just say is, my colleagues across the aisle are, love to push not just mis and disinformation, but just straight up propaganda, just lies. This is the reason why they're saying that they won't come to the table and negotiate is because they don't want healthcare to go to quote unquote illegals. Well, no person is illegal, but, I don't know if you all seen the news. Yesterday, it was announced that Reading Rainbow is coming back. Well, thank God. And just in time, because reading is fundamental. It is already against the law. Undocumented individuals are barred from receiving health care through the Affordable Care Act marketplace. And our Republican colleagues are just constantly finding themselves with a solution in search of a problem. This does not happen. It doesn't exist. So it's just another shell game from them to distract and to deflect from the fact that they govern in chaos, and they legislate with cruelty, and they are not accountable to the people who sent them to Washington. They are abdicating their responsibility to their constituents, and they're turning over all of their power. I mean, also included in this Republican spending bill, they're pulling back. They've got rescissions, so they repeatedly have supported funds that have already been appropriated in a bipartisan fashion that have been voted on. They're supporting the clawback of those funds to their communities, all because of this politics of Trump, of grievance and retribution, has these folks shaking in their boots, and they would much rather keep a job and not be in the sideline and collateral damage of Donald Trump than do the job they were sent to do. So go ahead.
Oh, yeah, you just mentioned the clawback. We're going to get to it later, but since you just mentioned it, so let's assume that the Democrats stay strong. We'll talk to you in a second about whether or not you have faith in your leaders standing strong. Even the governor yesterday, Healy, said she doesn't think that Chuck Schumer is always the best messenger for the Democratic agenda. Trump cuts a deal. I don't understand why he ever would cut a deal. We'll get to that too. He cuts a deal that satisfies the Democrats, and then as soon as it's signed, he starts the rescission process again so that the premiums on Obamacare, which are scheduled to go from $888 a year to $1,904, cuts a deal with you to keep them at $888, and then he ignores it, does a rescission thing, and the Republicans go along. So why can you ever trust that a deal with Trump is a deal, Congresswoman?
Oh, absolutely. You cannot, Jim. If Donald Trump's lips are moving, you cannot trust anything that he's saying, just to be clear. I mean, I don't know. Where is that book, The Art of the Deal? It's in somebody's bargain basement, maybe selling for $1. Listen, this man is running the country. Not only are we in an extremist march towards authoritarianism, but he's running it like, many of his as failed, bankrupted businesses. He's just moving fast and breaking things. And, people are asking me, well, how could people of conscience do this? Well, it's real easy if you don't listen to people. I'm listening to people like the young man that I met in Springfield a couple of weeks ago at the Democratic State Convention who's battling stage 4 cancer. And he says, I am so afraid that my destiny is in the hands of these people who don't even see me. I can no longer access a clinical trial that could save my life. I'm listening to grandmothers in Dorchester who wonder if they'll be able to, still be able to purchase the insulin that is essential for them to stay alive. I mean, I've shared with you before, my constituent, who had a life-saving liver transplant, a little girl, 9 years old, who relies on immunosuppressant drugs to stay alive. Her family pays for those immunosuppressant drugs with Medicaid. And I'm lifting up these stories to my colleagues across the aisle, and I'm saying this is bigger than being a Democrat or being a Republican. This is about being a person of conscience. Is the cruelty the point here? But they're not listening to their constituents. They're not hearing these stories. These are not line items. These are lifelines. That is what healthcare is.
Well, something.
We're talking about Ayanna Presley.
Yes, we are talking about Ayanna Presley from the 7th District. Congresswoman, we were talking about this before, that a lot of people aren't hearing these stories. I mean, I think the messaging really matters in this government shutdown, and I'm not sure that either Chuck Schumer or Jeffries should be delivering the message. It should be, to me, more of these stories where we tell the stories of that little girl you talked about with the liver transplant, or the person with the stage 4 cancer. Get those people on television and talk about what's going to, especially children, just to show the cruelty. Sometimes I think we're not, our PR is bad, and you hate to think it comes down to PR, but PR matters. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yes, it definitely does. And, I, again, as I've said many times before, I learned long ago that although I was well campaigning as an early candidate in electoral politics, saying I wanted to be a voice for the voiceless, I learned quickly enough that there's no such thing. No person is voiceless. What they are is unheard.
Right.
And it's our job to make our decisions informed, by those voices, but to give further amplification and spotlight to those stories. And so that's what guides me. I'm very clear about who I work for and who I'm accountable to. And so, to me, the decision was an easy one in terms of where I would land, because healthcare is a human right. It is an essential lifeline, and I have a district with some of the most disparate health outcomes. And community health centers have played a critical role in that. And again, we've already lost 2 of our hospitals. So I can't stand for another nursing home to close in the MA 7th. I can't stand for a community health center to close in the MA 7th. I can't stand for more people to be denied SNAP and Medicaid. And this Republican spending bill just compounds the harm. And so it's real simple here. Just restore the cruel cuts that you made to Medicaid. Save health care by not allowing these subsidies in the Affordable Care Act marketplace to expire, which have lowered the cost for health care, and keep the government open. And let me speak to that point. Here's Trump playing games with people's lives like he always does, and then threatening, I could do some things that, we won't be able to fix, and I could just keep laying people off. I mean, that's always been the plan here. From day one, with that so-called Department of Government Efficiency and these mass unlawful firings, reduction in force, in environments that are so oppressive and so chilling that people often feel pushed out, that's been their goal. He wants to privatize the entire federal government. And, in this district alone, I have so many federal workers, 25,000 federal workers, rather, in the Commonwealth.
Wow.
7,000 25,000. And a lot of people like to think it's just like the District of Columbia and Maryland and Virginia, the DMV area, but federal workers are everywhere. I have 7,000 in the Massachusetts 7th. And with this shutdown, having Boston Logan in my district, bear in mind, it's not just my congressional staff. It's also air traffic controllers and TSA agents that are reporting to work every day doing those essential jobs, and they won't be compensated for their labor.
Congresswoman, let's follow up on what you said a second ago. Trump's goal is to privatize the government. I think three of us, good that government does he care about? What incentive is there for Donald Trump to ever agree to anything to reopen the government? Why is he not better off with a shutdown government, with him having greater power to undo what people like you and others have built?
Mm-hmm. Again, what I would say, Jim, is that, you can't trust anything if his mouth is moving, but it's very important that the abuses of this executive not go unchecked. And he is moving in ways that are lawless and reckless and cruel. And so what we can't do is just go quietly into the night. It is really important that we are using every leverage and every tool available to us to resist, to reject, to obstruct. And then when bad things do happen, that we do everything to mitigate and to lessen that harm. And this is a moment where we need to be 10 toes down, we need to be united, and we need the whole to line. Because I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that people will be sicker, they will be hungrier, they will be poorer, they will be less safe, and people will die. They won't get diagnoses, they won't get treatment, because if they have to choose between their health care costs doubling or paying for their rent, these are incredibly cruel and unjust choices. And again, it's all preventable.
Yeah, Congresswoman, we earlier in the show, we talked about the despicable memes, the stuff that Trump has posted with the Democratic leader in the House in a sombrero and with that exaggerated mustache with a mariachi band playing in the background. And the connection for this the latest disgraceful action by Donald Trump is that allegedly what the whole agenda for the Democrats in the shutdown is to get health care for undocumented people. This follows last week. Jasmine Crockett was very low IQ. He was talking to the president of Somalia after he trashed Somalia. asking him if he wanted Congresswoman Ilhan Omar back. The FBI fired FBI agents who had the audacity to kneel for racial justice in the wake of the execution of George Floyd. And now this thing with Jeffries, obviously racism from beginning to end. What a coincidence. All these are people of color. What was your reaction when you saw that meme yesterday for the first time of Jeffries, which you did not once but twice, by the way?
Well, it's deeply offensive. And again, it shows how unserious Republicans are about doing anything to lighten the load for working families and to improve their lives. I mean, can you imagine? Here we are on the brink of a shutdown that is going to mean that people could be evicted from their homes, that federal contractors and workers can miss paychecks, that women and children could lose nutrition assistance. Millions of people are going to be harmed. And, here he is, generating AI bigoted memes. It just shows how completely unserious they are. And everything is meant to deflect and to distract. Listen, his to-do list is it's alienating our allies. It's befriending our enemies. It's attacking Black women. It's playing golf. It's ripping away food and health care and just sowing complete chaos. I mean, when I consider that UN meeting, when I consider the meeting that Hegseth had yesterday, and these folks have the nerve to talk about merit. This guy can't even do a clean pull-up. Who the hell is he? Who the hell is he?
By the way, J.D. Vance, Vice President Vance at a press conference right now was just asked about this. I think it's funny. We're having a good time. If you help us reopen the government, the sombrero memes will stop.
Yeah, and then he says, I don't even know what that means. When asked about the racism, he said something about how is he Mexican-American upset about having, I can't read the rest of it, you guys, on the bottom there.
Hey.
It's impossible to keep up. I mean, they just, lobby, insults. I mean, and here's the thing, people took them at face value when they claimed that they wanted to lower the temperature. This is not how you do it. If you want to lower the temperature, you don't, move in ways that are so reckless and unserious and that contribute to the polarization in this country. You come to the table and you negotiate. There is a process here. And this is a Republican spending bill that will only compound the harm of their big, ugly law. And they have to come to the table and reverse these harms by restoring those cruel cuts to Medicaid, saving people's health care, extending these subsidies in the Affordable Care Act that lowered the cost of health care for folks, extend those subsidies, and they have to keep the government open. It's really that simple. I mean, American people deserve, every person that calls this country home, every person that calls the Massachusetts home deserves so much better than the chaos that has been this government. They don't know how to govern.
So, Congressman, we only have a minute left. I'm just to provide a little energy to this thing on our end. I'm going to do something. You ever watch Jeopardy?
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to give you the answer to a question, and you're going to tell me what the question
he loves these
I was
quizzes.
going to ask you was. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Now listen, Jim.
Okay,
I
here.
didn't like these quizzes on OTR.
Okay, here it is. Here it
This
is.
one either.
Here is the answer, and you tell me what the question is. I'm too busy to answer that question, Jim and Marjorie. I'm focused on my work today, so don't bother me with those kinds of speculative things in the future. What's the question, Congresswoman?
The question is, what are you doing Saturday?
I don't know what the question is, and I was part
Is
of
she
the
running against Ed Markey in the primary for the Senate seat?
Okay. Alec, for 500, I'll take. What are you doing Saturday?
Okay, she's not answering the question. You want to answer the question?
No, honestly, no. Listen, I'm not being cute, guys. I mean, honestly, I am just focused on what's immediately in front of me. It's too much. I was talking to TSA workers when I landed at the airport. They're fearful about what this means for them. Just to close this out, remember that I came into Congress under Trump's, first occupancy of the Oval Office. And I came in, we were the first class to come in the midst of a government shutdown. And that was 35 days.
That's right.
and people, missing those paychecks. People spent months and in some instances years digging out and trying to recover. The food service workers that take care of us in the Capitol every day, the custodians, those are third-party contracted services. And those folks, I've had to fight for them to get back pay, to be made whole. And most of them still haven't been. These are folks who are not following this stuff. They're just living their lives and providing for their families, who came to work and were told, pack it up. I don't know the next time you're going to get any hours. And I don't know when you can expect the check. So I've got, real urgent priorities that I need to be focused on. And so I'm going to be in community, letting people know what resources are available, doing mutual aid, and keep fighting.
Good luck to you, Congresswoman. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for being with us. Appreciate it. We have been speaking with Massachusetts Congresswoman Anna Presley, who represents the 7th District here in Massachusetts. Thank you for listening to her. Thank you for listening to other editions
Can
of
I do
Boston
that before you do that?
What?
Just say, because we were talking to the Congressman, Jared didn't rejoin us, and we want to remind people they're doing their first movie. And you can call in a little bit later in the hour to give your thoughts on the movie at 617-300-3838. Sorry, Marjorie.
Okay, tomorrow we're going to be joined by political commentator Chuck Todd, former Massachusetts Public Safety Secretary Andrea Cabral, MIT economist John Gruber is going to talk about the economy, obviously, and the government shutdown. Catherine D'Amato of the Greater Boston Food Bank about the shutdown's impacts on food access, and the team behind a new GBH documentary, Living in Pryde, about a senior living facility for the LGBTQ community here in Boston. Yeah, it's really good. I want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Additional support from Mira Donaldson. Maddie Gaia ran our YouTube stream today. Our engineer is John DeClaw Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio if you want to see a really funny one about Jim demanding that everybody serve him all this food up at the Big E in Springfield. It's really a sight to see. The Culture Show with Jared Bowen starts immediately after us here on 89.7 GBH. Jim, hello, Jim. Goodbye, Jim.
No, goodbye is what
I'm
we're
Marjorie
doing.
Egan.
Hello tomorrow.
Yeah, hello tomorrow.
I'm Jim Brown. Goodbye.
Marjorie Egan.
See you. Bye.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And the DeMoore McKim School of Business at Northeastern University, where MBA and master's degree students can build vital business skills through experience.